August 10th, 2026, Pocahontas County Board of Education. This is an employee hearing. We'll stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Prior to the start of the meeting, we did verify with Ms. Bart Kinderman that she does want a open session. The personnel hearing will occur in open session. Do the parties wish to sequester witnesses?
We have only one witness other than the superintendent, who is actually in a separate room now already. So
Okay.
we would not have any problem with that. I'm not sure if Mr. Doss is calling any witnesses today.
I would ask that Julie Dunlap and Chloe Schaffner be sequestered.
Okay. Right in the conference room there. Okay, the personnel hearing will proceed as follows. I'll ask that administration presents their recommendation and evidence to the board. At the conclusion of the administration's presentation, the employee will then be afforded an opportunity to make a presentation to the board. Due process requires written charges to be presented to the employee. I believe you have them. Yes, okay. Which I am advised has occurred. The purpose of this hearing is not meant to be a full adversarial hearing, but an opportunity for the employee to respond to the charges prior to the board acting on the superintendent's recommendation. I'll swear in each witness prior to their testimony. Administration. Please present an explanation of the evidence against the employee. I will swear in each witness individually.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'm not sure if you want us to do an opening statement regarding the case initially before we present.
You may.
Okay, thank you. One, as a kind of a preliminary matter, this case and the evidence in this case will relate to students and student transcripts and transcription of grades and things of that nature. We've been very careful in the evidence that we will present here today to redact any documents that might contain students' names. Of course, I have spoken to the witnesses I will call about being mindful of that, because especially where this is an open hearing, we want to make sure that all witnesses and anyone who testifies does not inadvertently use a student's name or mention a student's name to protect that confidentiality. Okay. Thank you. This hearing today concerns, as you mentioned, the superintendent, Dr. Williams's recommendation that Ms. Burke-Kinnaman receive an unpaid suspension. To understand why the matters before you are such serious concern to the superintendent, we need to put this behind a backdrop or in front of a backdrop. At the time that this situation arose and was brought to Dr. Williams' attention in January of 2026, the school district was in a state of emergency. The State Department had done a special circumstances review of the school district, specifically at Pocahontas County High School, and there were a number of focus areas in that review, one of which was the transcription of grades and things associated with the transcription of grades. And that report had several findings of non-compliance by the school district, and the superintendent was charged with trying to get the school district within compliance. That process had been going on. I know some of the board members are new, but we're probably aware of it because you're here from the county, and other board members were actually on the board at the time. So the special circumstances review began in the 2024-25 school year. And then the state of emergency was declared. And then basically the report was issued, and the school district had lots of things that they needed to get in check in order to try to get control back to the local board, which is what Dr. Williams, when she came on board, was tasked with doing And she worked diligently to do that, and was actually, when this came about in late January and was brought to her attention, she was already preparing. She was at the end of that first year of the state of emergency, and she was preparing to make a very elaborate, detailed presentation to the state board about how all the non-compliance issues that have been identified, including transcription of grade issues, had been corrected, and that systems have been institutionalized now to protect the integrity of the school system and the fidelity of the school system, and also to demonstrate very clearly to the state board and the State Department that the Pocahontas County Schools desired to be in compliance. So that was kind of the backdrop of what was going on at the time when this came to her attention. Dr. Williams was not unfamiliar with the fact that there were transcription issues identified at Pocahontas County High School. Those are in a report that's open to the public. They could have already reviewed it. Nothing secretive in there, but there were several issues that were to be addressed, and those were being addressed. So when those mechanisms were put in place to make sure that those problems didn't occur any further, Dr. Williams didn't anticipate a new issue being brought to her attention. But even before it came to her attention, when she came in and when the school year started for the 2025-26 school year, she sent out a memo making very clear, we're going to transcribe grades according to policy. You have to report grades periodically, every period. You have to transcribe grades. We're going to be transcribing grades every semester. And this information was communicated countywide. So when the semester ended, again, she has to artifact all of her evidence. When she's saying that we're bringing the school district in compliance, we have to go prove that to the State Department and the State Board in order to try to get local control back. So she was gathering all this information and evidence, and that documentation was part of that process. So then to kind of affirm and solidify the practice that would be institutionalized in the school district regarding transcription of grades, she had a meeting scheduled in January to review that and make sure, and everyone's on this, they understood what we were doing here. Well, when she did that, the meeting was originally scheduled, I believe, for the 21st of January, but it was delayed due to maybe a snow day. So the meeting didn't take place till the 22nd. Well, after that meeting, or during that meeting and after the meeting, that's when the problems were brought to Dr. Williams' attention. There was nothing on her radar about Ms. Burke-Hinderman up to that point, or anything that she was involved with up to that point. But three folks who were administrators in the school system brought that to her attention and let her know that even though they understood what she was saying the school district I'm paraphrasing, needed to do to be in compliance with State Board Policy 2510, mainly with transcription of grades, that they were getting different directions from the county math coach, who was Ms. Burke-Hinderman. So Dr. Williams, that was kind of caught her by surprise, and she said, what do you mean? And well, we got an email from Ms. Burke-Hinderman telling us that we still need to continue to do it this other way. And the other way was, which you'll learn through this hearing is that 8th grade students were being permitted to take a weight-bearing course, Math 1, which is allowed under policy to do that. But there are rules and procedures, in fact, as to how that can happen. And the students who were taking and enrolling in Math 1 as 8th graders were being told, although it was not in the documents that the school board would have seen that were being put out, the flyers that were being put out, it was nowhere in that, or the memos, the letters that were being sent to the parents and students, but there was this kind of this other practice that wasn't really out in the open, if you will, to the public or to the board, I would expect, that said that students could basically try the class, and if it didn't work out for them, or if they didn't have at least a B average, then they could just withdraw. Well, that's contrary to state board policy. A student can't come in and try a class out and stay for a semester or even late into the second semester. And then if things aren't going well and we think we're going to get a C or a D, we can just withdraw. And then those grades are not recorded on your official transcript, and therefore they're not considered as part of your GPA. It results in a boost in your GPA. It could impact things such as athletic eligibility with GPAs, lots of different factors. So there's lots of reasons why that was not appropriate and permissible. So what was Dr. Williams at that point in time didn't draw any conclusions. That's what a superintendent does. They get reports from people and they have to determine, is this something I need to investigate? So she consulted with her liaison, who was the State Department appointee, Ms. Klein, and she consulted with her contact at the State Department, Ms. Kreiner, about here's what information I've just gotten. I'm getting prepared to come up to the state board and present why this school district should be returned to local control. And now this basically has landed in my lap. I'm concerned about it. You know, she sees what she sees there and looks for guidance and direction. And of course, what she believes should be done, and which they concurred with, was that we need to do an independent investigation of this. So that's how this investigation started. The investigation started because she wasn't looking for things. They were brought to her as the superintendent. And so the investigation started. The decision was made that it would be an independent investigation. Mr. Charles Kingery will testify here today. He was the one who conducted the investigation for the school district. And that investigation started, and then it evolved. And due to some of the information that he received during the investigation was expanded. So the investigation took a little bit longer than it may have originally taken. Lots of people were interviewed. You'll hear him testify about that. There's probably a dozen or more folks that were interviewed. Statements were taken from them. He's got a report of that he'll present today, and outlining all of his findings. So that is what Dr. Williams did, and then she waited on that report. She received that report in early June, the final report from Mr. Kingery, and it outlined all of his findings. He wasn't making a disciplinary recommendation. He wasn't making any determinations about what Dr. Williams should or should not do. But that independent investigation was a very important part of how you address these things. Keep in mind, Dr. Williams was then scheduled to be at the state board on February 11th, which may be a day that we remember here in Pocahontas County, because that's the day that she did go to the State Department and present all the progress that the school district had made, all the ways in which they'd come into compliance with the report, and every single thing, and presented artifacts to support that. And the state board accepted that report, and on recommendation of the state superintendent, returned local control to the school district because of all that work and effort that you, as the school district, did, Dr. Williams did, to bring yourself in compliance on every single item that had been outlined in that special circumstances review. But now she has a new item on her desk, what to do about it. So what this investigation showed her, and you'll hear a lot more detail about it through the witnesses, but was that this didn't just begin in January, that there was a historical practice of this. It was a practice that Ms. Burke-Kinderman advocated and had been around basically as long as she'd been around as the math coach. And it was advocating to allow students to basically try out Math 1. She vetted the students. She was involved in the process of vetting which students were allowed to participate in this class. And then they were monitored. And if the students were not maintaining an A or B average, then a conversation was had about maybe they should withdraw, or maybe they want to consider withdrawing from the class, because the promise that was made, which is where it violates state board policy, is that basically that won't count on your transcript. Well, when you're taking a weight-bearing class in the 8th grade, it's supposed to count. And through the investigation, and Dr. Williams is looking into it, there were a number of students in Pocahontas County High School who withdrew from the class. They then were allowed to retake Math 1 in 9th grade. Their transcripts did not reflect what had actually happened. According to state board policy, those grades that they received in the 8th grade should have been part of their transcript. They should have been transcripted. But this practice was that we don't transcript grades until the end of the school year, and we give students every opportunity, if they need to, they don't have an A or B, to withdraw. Why? That's a big question for today. Why? The information that came through the investigation as to why is because we were working hard to protect their GPA. We were working hard because we want to make sure that everybody's eligible for the Promise Scholarship, because you need a B average. Well, that doesn't mean you need a B in every class. It just means you need a B average. But it was all about the GPA and protecting the GPA. Nothing wrong with having an interest in student success and for students being very successful, but you can't circumvent state board policy to do that. You can't circumvent local county board policies to do that. You can't do things that elevate improperly or inaccurately elevate the student's GPA when it should not be done. And this wasn't happening anywhere else that we've seen. It was happening with this Math One program. Now, when the folks were interviewed, and Mr. Pingery will testify about that, it was very clear to to him and in his report that Ms. Burke-Kinderman is viewed to be an authority in the county, a math authority over the math program. She is the math coach, and she has been for many years. And she is a halftime math coach. And she also has a other job that she works that involves grant writing for math programs. M3T, a program you have here in the school district. And you will also see at the end of the packet of evidence that we introduce here today that we have a couple documents that will show you that student outcomes in math is something that M3T program takes a look at and measures. So the question is why? Why would we go out on a limb to implement a system that allows students to basically take a class and then drop out if it's not going well, and then their grade not be transcribed? Now, let's say a student takes Math 8 and then they fail. They can do that and retake, and then take Math 1. If they take Math 1 and then they fail and then they retake it, that's permissible, but then the grades are both averaged under the policy. This policy was not being followed. So then we asked, well, did this just come up as a oopsies? We just didn't understand it? No, what we learned during the investigation was the prior year, when the state was in a state of emergency, there were lots of folks, as you probably know, in your school district, looking at things, checking things out. There were consultants in the school district. The consultants recognized this problem and brought it to their attention. And we have emails that'll be part of the information you received today. We have those emails in January where she was writing the school administrators and telling them that, hey, I understand we're going to be doing this with all these other classes, but we're still going to do that with math. We're still going to wait and transcribe grades with math at the end of the school year. Like, we're still going to keep this math separated from everybody else. That was in January. That's what Dr. Williams learned about. But what we also learned during the investigation, that back the year before, when the consultants were here evaluating all these concerns that the school district, the State Department had with the school district, that they were saying these things are not, these are not in compliance. This is not the way you can do this. We have multiple emails from Ms. Burke-Kinderman telling your staff, we don't have to listen to consultants. They're just consultants. We don't have to even follow state board guidance. We only have to follow policy. So we don't really know, unless she tells us today, what policy she is referring to that she was following, because we've not seen any evidence of any policy that the practice that she was advocating to your staff and defending aggressively when there was any indication that practice was going to change. There's no evidence that there's a policy in place that allows her to do that. So that is the backdrop as to why this became such a very important, serious issue. It should be a serious issue to the school board. I mean, at the end of the day, as you know, as school board members, everything eventually falls on your shoulders as school board members. So, and when you're in state of emergency, threat of takeover, and those types of situations with the State Department, they're very good to work with you and to point out deficiencies and to ask for those deficiencies to be corrected. And remarkably, Pocahontas County did a great job of doing that. Within 1 year, you were released and returned back to local control. But at the time that happened, and when Dr. Williams is up there at the State Department explaining to the state board on February 11th of this year that you've met all those, you've checked all the boxes on every single thing that was out of compliance, including transcription of grades at the high school, she's sitting there knowing, as does Ms. Kreiner, we're now investigating another matter that could send us into a tailspin here with the state and with the State Department and the State Board of Education. And so she took that very seriously. And that's why we're here today. That's why we're here today, because she continues to take it very seriously. Technically, we're here today because Ms. Burke-Kinderman wanted a hearing. This matter could have been presented directly to you by the superintendent, and this information, you could have acted on that without a hearing. But Ms. Burke-Kinderman has an absolute right to a hearing, and she's exercised that twice now. Her prior hearing, she exercised that right. just to be placed on non-disciplinary paid administrative leave. We had a hearing on that. And then now we have this hearing, and it's open to the public to hear. So we will call witnesses. I'll give Mr. Dawes an opportunity to obviously to do an opening statement, but we'll call witnesses and present documents for the board to corroborate and back up and support everything that I've said to you in this opening statement and more. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do my own. First of all, what I'd like to ask of the board, because I've asked numerous times of the superintendent, who is the custodian of the records, and Mr. Marone, for copies of the reports, copies of the witness statements, everything that they say, the evidence that they're going to use today, because we've not had an opportunity to review that. They have refused to deliver it to us. We have actually asked for Freedom of Information Act request sent to the custodian of the records. And from that, got a letter back from Mr. Marone where they are claiming exemptions on every single document that's in that report. 2 reports and witness statements. We have none of those. So before we begin, I would ask the board to ask the custodian of the records to please give us a copy of those reports so that we can review them and properly be prepared to answer to all of this nonsense.
Respond to it. Okay. A couple things. First of all, Mr. Dawes is not entitled to the records prior to this hearing here today. It's clear in the law. Number one, Mr. Dawes has appeared in this case on behalf of Ms. Burke-Hinderman as her counsel. Yet Mr. Dawes contacted the school board directly without my knowledge, requesting information, trying to backdoor information that he had already been told that he was not entitled to prior to this hearing. So then he went through the back door and tried to do a FOIA request to request personnel matter records from the school district without informing me of that. That is a violation. That is not something that should have happened. I learned of it because the superintendent let me know that those requests had been received. Mr. Dawes is not entitled to records in advance in the discipline matter. Before this hearing today, he's entitled to any documents today that we present at this hearing today. A lot of the documents that we will present today were authored by his client. So he's not entitled to that. The law is very clear on that. Secondly, he's not entitled to use FOIA as a backdoor effort to try to circumvent the process in an employee discipline proceeding. Her records are treated just like anybody else's records at a school district. Anybody else in this room that's an employee of Pocahontas County Schools, Mr. Dawes can't write a letter to Dr. Williams and request a copy of your file or any disciplinary matter you might have been involved in or any of those documentations. That's clearly exempted under state code. That was explained to him very clearly. He has asked several times, interestingly, because I told him the same thing every time, that he's not entitled to it. So he is entitled to whatever information we present here today, that the board hears here today, he's entitled to receive that today. And I have copies here and I'm prepared to do that. Thank you.
I'll respond again. First of all, that's not correct. There's no rules. There's no rules, civil procedure, or evidence whatsoever in this here. These are your records and her records. What they gave us was her personnel file. Clearly, we weren't talking that. As the employee, she can get her own personnel file. I'll grant you, I can't get anybody else's in here unless I represent them. But there are reports and information that they're going to use today that they will not give us. They're your records. You can tell them to give them to us. And by the time we're done, you're going to find out how much money you spent to generate these records for no reason whatsoever than what they're trying to make up here today. I would like to continue my opening, but I would like to see the reports, the records, because there's nothing there. That's the reason why we want to have it. That's our understanding that there's nothing there. If you have read the letter of her recommendation as to why she's placing her on a 30-day suspension, you can see There's nowhere in there that she's saying that Joanna has committed a crime, violated the law, violated state policy, violated county policy, that she's not violated any rule, regulation, nothing whatsoever. She's not disobeyed an order from the superintendent. She's not been insubordinate. There's nothing there. I mean, what the evidence will show, if they will quit hiding it, is nothing more than retaliation, vengefulness, attacking Ms. Kinderman because of the superintendent's unfailure to do her job and respond to coordinating matters so that Joanna could do her job. That's what the evidence is going to show in the end. And they spent all this time, 6 months. Backdrop is 6 months of trying to find something, anything, to hang on Joanna, and they have nothing. Why we're here, it's not because Joanne's asking for a hearing. It's because of the continued witch hunt, persecution of a very good employee and an excellent math coach, math teacher, mathematician. That's why we're here. So evidence is going to show. I don't know what he's getting paid today, but up until the time they answered before you, this county's already paid Mr. Marone's firm $33,000. They paid Densmore and Shaw another $7,000. That's 40. Paid the investigator $1,250, which I don't think that statement is quite correct yet. I think the evidence is going to show that he made more than one trip to Pocahontas County, wrote over 60 pages of a report, and if he's only charging $1,250, he's a worse businessman than I am. We need to get to the bottom of this. And the only way to get to the bottom of it is let us see the reports. We get one chance at this hearing right here today, and that's it. I'm asking that you take 15 minutes. If she's the custodian of the records, I'm sure they've got several copy machines back there. Make a copy of those reports and hand them out. Let's take a look at them before we proceed any further.
Couple things. Number one is Mr. Dawson's brought a lot of things that are wholly irrelevant here today, which tells me a lot, because when you don't have a case, you try to distract everybody to other things. So what the school district has spent to in this particular matter here has been generated a lot by all the dramatics that we've had associated with this case. The fact that we had a hearing on a non-disciplinary paid administrative leave that Ms. Burke-Hinderman insisted upon, that was approved by this board 5-0.
That's not correct. That's not correct. There wasn't even 5 board members here that day. Okay? Think back.
Wait, what's that? What that mean? What does it matter if you're 5 or 4?
4.
Okay. What does that matter?
Well, that's you misrepresenting facts to the board.
Well, we had, like I said, a lot of things, and this case was ready to go to hearing in June, by the way. And the reason we're here in August is because of multiple requests by Mr. Doss and Ms. Kinderman to delay this hearing. We actually had to delay a couple of things at their request. They were always very accommodating in doing that. But more importantly, what I said at the beginning of my opening, and I said it again in response to his request that you take up something on your agenda that's not there, is that we are prepared to present the report with the witness, Mr. Kingery, when he testifies here today, which is what we are required to do under the law. That is all we're required to do. We are not required to provide anything in advance of this meeting, which is, as you stated, Madam President, at the beginning, this is basically she is entitled to a notice of the charges, an explanation of the evidence, which I've given in an opening, but we'll put on some testimony about that. And then she has an opportunity to be heard. And if that explanation of the evidence, which it will today, includes the testimony of Mr. Kingery and his report, then we will present that here today, which I already have copies ready to present. So we are going to present it as part of our case today.
May I speak one more time?
Yeah.
The last hearing that we had, again, there's no rules of procedure, no rules of evidence. She wasn't even entitled to that hearing by law. They gave her the opportunity for that hearing. And every notice that the superintendent sends you is, we've given you a hearing in 5 days. You got to let us know in a day and a half whether or not you want to hear it. They set the hearing dates. The first hearing date they set right exactly the time that I had a circuit court case. Those things get continued all the time. The last hearing that we were going to have, this hearing they wanted to have, tried to get it in, let's be frank about it, before 3 of you took office so that we could deal with the prior board. And again, I think had maybe 5 days notice and wanted to have it again on a day that I was in court. The union rep wasn't even available. And Joanna had her daughter at Morgantown to the doctors. And you know what they offered us? What they offered us was, okay, you're busy in the morning circuit court, so you can have a Zoom hearing. We can do this by Zoom that evening. Now, to be frank, I offered several dates in July. Matter of fact, I think I offered 9 different dates, and they came back with, no, we won't do it that day. We'll move it up a day. We'll even make it shorter time to get ready. That's what we'll give you. So when I complained and said how unfair this is to employees, and we really understand how you treat the employees, then they gave us a date in August. Skipped all the dates that we had in July and went straight to August. So that's how we get here. I mean, I'm not going to take the blame or make it get turned like I'm doing something wrong whenever, truthfully, when you read the initial, if you want to know the backdrop, the initial letter that she gets says it's about math 1 policy and math field day. Now, if you can read that letter and tell me what she did wrong, I would love to hear it. So when we had that first hearing, which was supposed to be, Mr. Grimes read what the hearing was all about to determine whether or not the superintendent's actions were arbitrary and capricious, and I can't pronounce that. We weren't able to ask what underlying facts, what made her decide, who even complained. We weren't allowed to ask what the underlying facts were to even determine why the superintendent could have been arbitrary and capricious. Why give somebody a hearing and say, we're here to determine whether or not the superintendent's actions were arbitrary and capricious, but yet you're not allowed to ask questions? I told my wife, I finally know what it's like to represent a Jew in Germany during a time of Hitler, because they gave her a hearing, but yet she wasn't allowed to ask questions about it. And how in the hell a board could walk out of here and vote that her actions were not arbitrary and capricious without hearing what they were? I have no clue. You'll have to ask Mr. Grimes and Mr. Gibson about that, because they were there. But this hearing, she's entitled to ask. And why we're keeping it secret? Because in any other proceeding that I'm in, civil court, criminal court, I don't care if it's DUI court, you get handed the information that's going to be there so that we can prepare and be here today. And they still won't give it to us. They still want to keep it secret. Oh, they want to hand it out. But what he's going to give you, because the way I understand it, we got the superintendent that's going to testify, and we have an investigator that's going to testify. We're not going to see the evidence. We're not going to have the witness statements. I don't know what's in these to determine who I needed to have here as a witness today and who I didn't. Don't have subpoena power anyway. The only way I can ask about those 2 witnesses is because they were sitting here. Okay. There's other witnesses, yeah, that I'd like to have here, but I can't subpoena. So those witness statements would be very beneficial to you, not just to us. I'm not trying to sidestep or twist anything. I'm here to help present facts. Truthfully, I don't know what they are completely, because I don't have a report. I don't have witness statements. I don't have one thing to know what she's supposed to have done to violate Math 1 policy or math field day. Now, I'm also going to ask the board to make sure that we're talking about that there is a state policy that says that you cannot, as a high school credit class, transfer from one class to another. Because it's my understanding, and evidence will show that's done at that high school every day. That's the same as having Math 1, 8th grade. They're not told, hey, if you can't make it, you don't like it, whatever, hey, it won't matter. And here's the thing too. Joanna has nothing whatsoever to do with transcription of grades, reporting grades, recording grades. That's up to administrators, to teachers. And if this practice has been going on, probably, I think, about 15 years. Why is she the only one that received a leave of absence without pay while it was being investigated? And why is she the only one sitting here today? So I'm not trying to do smoke and mirrors. I'm not that smart. Really, I'm not. I want the facts. I want the truth. I want you to be able to decide on that. So again, I would ask that we take a break. Those reports and witness statements be handed over so that I can properly cross-examine witnesses. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to do it on the fly, and I hope everybody packed a lunch and maybe done. Okay.
I'd like to respond. I'd like to respond just because we are on the record, and this is a record that could be transcribed and reviewed later by another agency. So I want to make sure that there are not any, the inaccuracy that were just stated. First of all, I want to just touch on, although it's such a side issue, I'm shocked it was even brought up with the scheduling matter. While Mr. Doss did suggest some dates in July that were not workable for us, we then took the whole second half of July and we're trying to schedule a hearing in July. And Ms. Burke-Hinderman had to go to Maine to be with her mother-in-law, we were told, and that she was completely unavailable for 2 weeks. That's why the hearing didn't happen in July. Then in August, I discussed not one, but two, maybe 3 days, but at least 2 days with Mr. Doss. And this was the date that was perfect for him, and that's what his email says. So the reason we're here in August as opposed to June was not because the school district wasn't trying to process this case timely. Secondly, about asking questions, not being able to ask questions, those of you who were here know differently from the hearing that we did have previously is Mr. Doss asked lots of questions during that hearing. And in fact, even though he had his client sworn in as a potential witness, he didn't call her to testify. Instead, he called the Dr. Williams, the superintendent himself, and then asked her a lot of questions. So he had lots of opportunities to ask questions. So that was a false statement as well. And I know that what I'm hearing from all of this is that Mr. Doss thinks he's in circuit court. He's confused this proceeding as the very thing you said it's not, Madam President. This is not a full-blown adversarial hearing. I've been practicing law 39 years. Okay, I've been in circuit courts for lots of hearings in my career, many years of every type of nature. This is very different from that. This is an administrative proceeding. There's minimum due process entitled. You outlined it perfectly in your opening statement, what we're obligated to do here today. It's not a circuit court hearing. The rules of evidence do not apply. We are not required to provide evidence in advance of this hearing. He will get a copy of any evidence we present today at the same time everybody else gets it. That's what the rules are. I've never seen Mr. Doss in an education case. I've never seen him in an administrative hearing case. He may have done lots of them. I've never seen him. I can't count how many I've done. I've done scores and scores of hearings like this. I've been in hundreds of student discipline and employee discipline matters in my career. So what he's experienced and explaining to you is not where we are here today. So I would ask that you keep that in mind as this hearing proceeds, because it seems to me like the biggest challenge in this hearing is going to be to keep it within the scope of what it's supposed to be. And yes, you said that, that was the Supreme Court of West Virginia. What you said earlier comes straight out of the Supreme Court of West Virginia case that's based on a United States Supreme Court case that the employee is entitled to a notice of the charges, which she has had, by the way, for months at this point. She's had that. There are some explanations in that notice. There'll be more explanations today. Then our responsibility ends. Then if she wants to be heard, she can be heard. That's what this is about here today. So we will present the evidence that we have today. We will provide copies to everyone here, but I wanted to make sure the record was clear on those other items because that is inaccurate and I didn't want an inaccurate record.
So what has happened is you've gotten what you're entitled to for the Supreme Court, the interpretation of the West Virginia Code, right here. So this is gonna have to stand because going forward, should you want to move on through the process, then everything that is said here can go into that. So we're gonna leave it. You want to call your first witness?
Yes, please.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your full name.
Charles Everett Kingery.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Kingery, you brought in a copy of your report here today.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Madam President, at this point in time, I would like to pass out the exhibit packet that the administration will present here today, which includes the bulk of this is actually the report that Mr. Kingery has in front of him. Have a copy for each board member.
Thank you. Fine, I just know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, this exhibit packet that I've handed out to everyone else has more than just this report in it. The packet that I've handed out has multiple letters that were where's my cover sheet there? Oh, letters that were submitted to in communications between the superintendent and Ms. Kingery. Those are things we'll get to in Dr. Williams' testimony. Everything's already been pre-marked as exhibits with numbers. And there is what's called a bait stamp at the bottom right-hand corner. So throughout the testimony, if we refer to a page number, we're referring to that red page number so everybody can know what page we're talking about. But again, Mr. Kingery only has in front of him A2, the administration's exhibit number 2, which is his report, which is about 42 pages. It was interesting that Mr. Doss knew how long the report was that he hadn't seen. I was surprised at that.
It's on your
But,
bond
as a copy
index.
of his
Hey,
report-
excuse me.
Yeah.
It's on your bond index that you gave.
Yeah, so here's a copy of the report, and then here's a copy of all the PDF exhibits that are attached there to it. So that's, you have in front of you, like I said, the packet, which we'll work through those exhibits through the both witnesses' testimony, but that is the report that he has in front of him. It's exhibit A2, and it starts on page 20 of the base. Mr. Kingery, would you please state your name for the record? I know you've already done that, but just so we're make sure we're still talking to the same person.
Charles Everett Kingery.
And what's your occupation?
I'm a policy and compliance investigator for Mountain State ESC.
Okay, what is Mountain State ESC?
It is a educational services cooperative that conducts various educational activities throughout the state.
And your background and training, just briefly.
I'm a retired police officer, having served 25 years with the Huntington Police Department, retired as a lieutenant there. During that time, I served as both a patrol officer, patrol supervisor, and as an investigator.
And then you, in your retirement, you went to work for Mountain State ESC, which is an educational service program, and you do investigations for them. Is that
Correct?
Okay. Were you asked by Superintendent Dr. Williams to conduct an independent fact-finding investigation involving Joanna Burke Kinderman?
Yes, sir.
What were you asked to investigate?
I believe back in middle of February, I was asked to conduct an investigation into the possibility of grades being improperly recorded, whether student participation particularly in a Math 1 program, were being recorded in Weavis, and what involvement Mrs. Kinderman had regarding that.
Were you asked to determine whether any disciplinary action should be taken in this case?
No, sir.
Okay. So let's look at the report you've got in front of you. It looks like I know you have page numbers of 1 through 42. But it starts on page 20 with the bait stamp. So just make sure we're looking at the same page. You have that? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And then in addition to that, you have a lot of documentary exhibits that are attached to your report.
Yes, sir.
And those are listed on the first page and actually carrying over the second page.
Yes, sir.
Okay, except for the recorded interviews. There's the actual recordings, the electronic recordings of those interviews are not part of that.
Correct.
Okay, and does your report contain summaries of those interviews?
Yes, sir.
And in some instances, you've quoted statements that were made?
Yes, sir.
Okay, during those interviews. Okay, and then on the second page at the bottom, it has a list of persons that you interviewed as
Yes,
part of this investigation. Looks like there's maybe a dozen people there that you interviewed.
Yes, sir.
So you conducted those interviews.
I did.
And those interviews include teachers, principals, central office administrators, and even Ms. Burke Kinnaman herself.
Correct.
All right. Did you also review emails and memorandum and policies and other contemporaneous records?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the records that you reviewed, I know some of your summaries there, we'll go to several of them, but you've got them categorized and you've got them listed in a sequence A, B, C, D, E, F, and whatnot. But like, for example, the letter to the parents regarding math on March 20th, 2025 is a 2-page document, but you may have a document in here that says emails that that might encompass like exhibit I, email NS. Is that an abbreviation for a witness?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that would be Nebraska Scotchy?
Correct.
Scotchy. My name gets spoken all the time, so I always hate to state somebody's name. Okay, and so her email string that you're looking at there was going to go from 93 to 109. So it's more than just a single page document. There's a whole string of emails that was received there. And so you've done an outline there, but the documents that constitute all of these things are all attached other than the electronic recorded statements.
Correct.
Okay. And the investigation here, is this the final report that you issued on June the 5th, 2026?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to look at that before you sat down here today? Okay, that is your report?
Yes, sir, it is.
So, Madam President, I would move to admit the board's exhibit A2 the June 5th final investigative report of Mr. Kingery and its documentary attachments, excluding the interview recordings, as our exhibit here today. Okay. So let me just go to Ms. Burke-Kinderman. Did you interview her?
Yes, sir.
When did you do that?
That was in February the 26th.
And let me just stop there for a second. I probably should have done that because I know the board members, everyone's seeing this report for the first time, but there on page 3, you have summary of investigation, which is just an overview. So we break down the report, and then you have a summary of each individual that you interviewed.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And those go on throughout, and they start with the name of the person that you interviewed, and you go through all of that as we look at the breakdown, and that carries us over to page let's get to the end of those interviews. The summaries of your interviews are going to go all the way over to page, looks like page 38. And then, or I'm sorry, 39 goes on over. That's still part of Mr. Campbell's interview. And then the results of the investigation start on page 40. So you had your overview at the beginning. You have a summary of all the interviews. You've attached all these documents. And then the results of your investigation are found on pages 40, 41, and 42.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So the anatomy of the report, if you will. So I asked if you had interviewed Ms. Burke-Kinderman and asked you when. I think you were looking for that.
Yes, sir. Interviewed her on February the 26th this year at 5:13 p.m.
Okay. So, and was she accompanied by a representative?
She was.
And did you explain the general subject matter of what you were investigating?
Yes, sir.
And did you give her an opportunity to explain her understanding of the Math One program and her involvement in it?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did she provide information and documents for you to consider?
I believe she did. Yes, sir.
And what did she provide you with? What information, and can you tell us about that interview?
Sure. She, well, we started out having her describe to me just the general nature of what a math coach does. I'm not an educator, I'm an investigator, so there was a lot that I was not fully familiar with. And so I had her explain to me what her role as a math coach was in the Math One program. She did that and explained that in that role, she primarily interacts with teachers and assists them in how to conduct, I guess, how to better teach to students so that they can understand.
Just for reference, her summary starts at the bottom of Bait Stamp 34. For anybody else looking for it, I know you've got it there. So.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so tell us about that interview and what your inquiry was.
So then I asked her, what involvement she had with respect to grades in the Math One program. She said that she did not have anything to do with grades. She did not enter grades, and explained that those were done by the teachers. Those grade entries would have been made by the teachers. I asked about meetings that she had with students and parents regarding. Well, first let me back up. In explaining the Math One program, we talked about eligibility for students to enter the Math One program. She went through explaining that there was a summer program that they had to go through beforehand to kind of prep them, make sure that they're up to speed and so forth. Then they take the course. And as they're taking the course, there's a great deal of focus on ensuring that they have achieved mastery in the program. That's obviously so that they're not falling behind and that sort of thing. The standard for mastery that was set was a B. And I asked her if who set that standard. I believe she said that we set that standard. She never specifically said who. It was kind of more of a consensus of everyone in the program. Was her explanation. But essentially the standard for remaining in the course was a B.
Okay, so based on your interview in the documents, what did you learn about Math 1 as being offered to 8th grade students?
Math 1 is a high school level program that is offered to 8th grade students.
Okay, and how did you learn through your interviews how those grades were handled historically for 8th graders taking Math 1?
For Math 1, if a student achieves less than mastery, so less than a B, those grades are not recorded, and that student is allowed to withdraw from the course.
Okay, so the student was allowed to withdraw during the 8th grade year if they weren't achieving a B at a certain point.
Correct.
And based on your interviews, how late in the school year were students allowed to do that?
It appeared up to and including literally the end of the program.
Okay, the end of the school year. And did she explain what happened to the Math 1 grade or the credit when a student withdrew late in the school year?
It was just dropped.
Okay. Could the high school, during your interviews, was determined whether the student who withdrew was able to then turn around and take Math 1 again in high school?
Yes, they would be.
You interviewed a couple other witnesses regarding this process. There was several other outlined in thing, but do you recall your interview with Nebraska Scholarship?
Yes, sir.
And was she also one who informed you that students were permitted to drop grades and that the Math 1 record would disappear from Weavis?
Yes.
Okay. And what about Ms. Schaffner? Did she describe the students who then took the grade the class again in freshman and what happened?
Yes, sir, she did.
And what did she say?
Chapters. So she described a similar thing where the student, if they did not achieve a certain grade level, would be dropped. This would be a C or lower. They would be allowed to withdraw from the program. They would then move to the regular Math 8 class.
Mm-hmm. So was it clear to you from your interviews, Ms. Kinderman and others, that the grade that the student was maintaining at the point in time in the year that they were considering withdrawal was a factor?
I'm sorry, can you say it?
The grade that the student was maintaining at the point in time the discussion was being had about withdrawal, was that a factor?
Yes.
Okay. And did anyone explain to you why that was a factor? Did Ms. Kinderman?
Yes.
What did she say?
Her focus on the B grade as a standard for mastery had to do, as she explained it, with she repeatedly referenced the Promise Scholarship. That in order to be eligible for the Promise Scholarship, the student needed to have a B average. If a student fell below that B average, they may not be eligible for the Promise Scholarship, and then they would not be able to go on to college potentially, or at least not receive funding for college.
And did your investigation establish that Ms. Burke-Kinnaman personally entered or transcribed these grades into Weavis?
She did not.
So what was the basis of your concern regarding her conduct?
The level of influence that she had regarding how those grades were recorded, whether or not they got recorded, and whether students were allowed to withdraw from the program.
Could you elaborate on that for the board members who are hearing this evidence for the first time themselves today? Is what was the influence she had and how did that come to your attention?
Sure. So in speaking with Ms. Kinderman, she described that she did not have any input on the grades. She wasn't involved in grades. Did not enter those grades into Weavis or any other program. All of that appears to be correct, appears to be true. However, every witness that I spoke to talked about the level of influence that she had, her forceful personality. She was very insistent. I would specifically ask if she bullied them in any way, and they said no, that she did not. But they did mention that she was very forceful, that this was a person you don't say no to, and that sort of thing. They also looked to her as the subject matter expert regarding the entire Math 1 program. So for pretty much everything from how to teach that program, recording the grades, whether or not grades should be recorded, speaking with parents of students that were struggling in the program, and that sort of thing.
All right. And I noticed exhibit as you identified as K, which if we go to page 112 on the Bates stamps, 12 and 112 and 113. I noticed you had these job postings with job duties and qualifications for the job she filled in 2017 and then also when she filled it in 2012. You have those in your report.
Yes, sir.
And did you review those job duties and responsibilities in conducting this investigation?
Yes, sir.
And the things that you just described that she was doing that was portrayed to you by these other witnesses, were those things in her job description?
They were not.
Okay. There's nothing about transcription of grades, students withdrawing, being able to delay withdrawal, having a standard of a B, none of that was in any way part of her job description.
No, sir.
I want to go to an email of January 21st, 2026 from Ms. Burke-Kinderman concerning math. I think it appears in your exhibit several times. If you don't have one there handy, I can find one of the references for you here. Let's go. We start on 64. It's a pretty lengthy email string. Now that email string actually goes from May 21st, 2025, and we'll come back to that, but let's, because the way they put these in order, let's scroll, I guess, down through the pages and get to page 84. Are we in 84?
Yes, this is the one with the generation.
Okay, let's just go to 84. I think that goes directly to that specific email. And this is you've got that in front of you. Starts on 84. And this is an email that you had as part of your investigation, written by Ms. Burke-Kinderman on January 21st at 2026 at 11:32 a.m.
Correct.
And she sent it to Stephanie Burns, Melissa Hill Doss, Julie Brown, Charlie Hughes, and copied Nebraska Scotchy and Melissa Jordan. That's the same interview we're looking at.
Yes, sir.
And it's the policy for 8th grade Math 1 is what she titles the subject.
Yes, sir.
Correct. Okay, this particular email, did you consider this as part of your investigation?
Yes, sir.
And what did you make of this email?
In this email, she writes, it is our advice to students not to be able to maintain a B in Math 1 at semester to consider withdrawing. However, this is mindful of how important GPA is for college admissions and funding. If you have a student who you are concerned with, please be sure to notify parents in writing and copy your principals and me.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't get it right.
I'd like to confirm that we will not transcribe grades until the end of the year for this course. That's what we have done in the past, which we allowed students to withdraw from high school credit and transcription all the way into spring. This way they can try to push themselves without hurting their future prospects. She ends it with asking a question, principals, Missy and Stephanie, is this still the case?
Okay. So this was on January 21st, and in this email, she establishes the B standard, correct, that you testified about. She confirms that.
Yes, sir.
And that she's mindful of the GPA for college admissions and funding.
Yes, sir.
All right. And if there's any students that there's concern about, that she's telling the folks on this email to notify the parents in writing and to copy their principal and to copy her.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did she explain during the interview why she was the one that she wanted them to copy?
I don't recall if she did.
Okay. And she then says that she wanted to confirm and puts not in all caps that they will not be transcribing until the end of the year for this particular course. Which course was that?
The Math 1 course.
And then she asked the question at the end, is this still the case? Did you talk to her about that?
Yes.
And tell us about that.
Ms. Kinderman described this as her just asking a question. However, my concern was that this email occurred after a memo from the superintendent on how grades are supposed to be transcribed, the scheduling and so forth. And also the statements from the other witnesses that described her as trying to force them or intimidate, not force, that's the wrong word, trying to intimidate them into following a particular policy or procedure, I guess.
And let's go back now to 64. The email string on 64, which starts, it's base stamp 64, and that's the communications on May 21st, 2025, the prior school year.
Okay.
And now that thing ends with the May 21st, but it actually, we're going to have to scroll backwards to see how it all started. And if we go back, we can see that she actually has some emails in August of 24. But then the very next email that she sends is, let's see, it keeps coming forward here. Is on April 24th, 2025 on page 71, the Bates stamp number. And this email, she tells everybody it's long, but please read it in its entirety. And then we get to flip kind of in reverse order there to follow the email. And you've got this attached. And she's talking about in the email, Pocahontas County Schools allows eighth graders to take high school math credit depending on the needs of the individual school schedules. This could be one course which combines the standards of Math 1 and eighth grade math, or could be two standalone courses. We would need to submit standards for the combo class, something I can work on if directed. And she's sending this message out to those folks listed on the email in April of 25. But that conversation continues, if you'll see, and keeps scrolling forward. And I know that you've quoted some of this in your report. And on the same day, on the 25th, it looks like that she, if you go on up to page 66, you see Nebraska Scotchy is writing back and says, any updates on this? We'll work on a master schedule. I met with Jeremy and Brian yesterday. Those are the consultants. And they mentioned if students took Math 1, they shouldn't take eighth grade and they should drop. Should we change our Math 1 entrance criteria? And then you can see her response at 9:36 a.m. on May the 21st. So I'm now on page 65. I was trying to back us into that to figure out, give it some context. And this is where her email says Jeremy and Brian are consultants with opinions. They are not the state. You incorporated that into your report, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Why was that important?
My understanding is that these consultants were brought in to explain to everyone in the district how to do how to report grade, how to make entries into Weavis and so forth. And this was important because it appeared that Ms. Kinderman was being dismissive of the guidance and direction that being put forward by these two consultants.
Mhm. And then if you go back to 64, she then says, I completely agree, and I hope we do not throw away a policy that's led to years of excellence due to the advice of consultants. Did she ever identify a policy, either local or state level, that supported this protocol of allowing students to kind of try Math 1 and drop out if they weren't getting a B or an A?
When I asked about that from Ms. Kinderman, she said that that was our policy, that has always been the policy. But she never pointed to any particular policy within the district regulations, if I'm using that term correctly.
Well, at the bottom of that page 64, it says we can't change the approved policy just because these two consultants think it's best. It's our adopted policy. Did she ever clarify like with where the policy was? Whose adopted policy?
No, just again, that policy was she used the term policy, but I believe it was the practice that everyone used, not necessarily a policy. She kept referring to that as policy.
And now you mentioned also a memo. I want to go back to, it's going to be page 171 towards the very end of your report. There was a couple memos there that are both, they're listed as X, but there's actually two documents. So the first one is at the beginning of the school year for the 25-26 school year. It's a message from Dr. Williams about basically clarification regarding grading and reporting grades and showing progress. And of course, this is coming on the heels of the state, special circumstances review and all the non-compliance findings. And she makes clear that here's what we're doing, and this is to the entire county.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the next memo is one from Christy Hammonds that's dated January 27th, 2026. And this is a memo, again, reiterating the transcription process and procedure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are those the documents you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the last exhibit there, Y, is notes on M3T and M3T's impact on student outcomes. Why did you include this in your report?
I included this because there was a concern regarding the M3T program and whether or not the way in which students' grades, speaking of the Math 1 program, how their grades are recorded had any impact on that M3T grant, or if it influenced the decision for how that process might take place. And this page 173 and 174 are taken from if you see at the top of 173 is the I guess it's the HTML code for the website that this was taken from. This is from their public, I don't know what you would call it, advertisement, I guess is the term that I would use, of the M3T program, or M3T grant, and how positive that grant is in the educational process. Included in that had to do with student outcomes, which is the part that's on page 173, and notes the participation in the program, and it says down at the bottom that receive benefits at all grade levels, 6 through 12, with most marked at the 8th grade.
So it does appear that the outcomes of these students that were reported would impact that M3T grant program.
On its face, it would appear that it would impact the program. It was certainly referenced here.
Okay. Now let's turn to page 59 on the Bates stamp, which is 40, starts with 40 of your investigation. And I want to ask you really about the results of your investigation at this point. You've outlined that in multiple steps. Looks like there's 6 of them. Could you just review that for us now and kind of explain to the board each of your findings and your results of investigation?
So, in the results of the investigation, there were a number of areas that I found concerns in. First off, I would like to note again, there's no indication that Mrs. Kinderman had any direct input in the grades. She did not record grades. She did not input those grades into Levis or anything like that. But it's also clear that she attempted to influence how grades were recorded. Sure. The third was there was a concern regarding school principals and teachers' understanding of how grades are to be recorded. They did not have a full understanding, and so they leaned on Mrs. Kinderman as the subject matter expert for guidance in all matters regarding how grades were to be recorded, whether or not students could withdraw from the program, and so forth. The fourth was Mrs. Kinderman insisted on being part of the discussions the teachers and principals would have with parents regarding whether or not those students should remain in the program. And that would be the meetings where issues with whether or not the student was able to maintain mastery or not would be discussed. Fifth was the manner in which grades were transcribed. Again, Ms. Kinderman didn't transcribe grades, didn't input those, but she did have a degree of influence. She insists that she was just asking questions, referencing that email. But it was clear from all of the other witnesses that that was not the case. They've again frequently talked about how insistent she would be. They described her giving direction, but in the form of a question. So it sounded like she was asking a question, but she's really telling them what she wants to have. The last issue had to do with the purchasing of T-shirts regarding a you said it was a math field day. I'm probably getting that term wrong, but this was there were T-shirts that were purchased in relation to a or for volunteers. It was a math field day event. The students were given T-shirts for participating in that program. Those T-shirts were purchased with county money, and so there was a question whether those should have been purchased for the volunteer participants. I was able to determine that, in fact, some people did receive those T-shirts that were volunteers in the program.
And based upon the interviews that you conducted and the investigation that you conducted, was it your conclusion that Ms. Burke-Kinderman used her position of authority and influence over the others in the math program, the teachers and the administrators, to consistently follow this practice of allowing students to withdraw even after grades had been reported up until late in the school year to avoid transcription of a grade less than a B?
Yes.
One thing I wanted to touch on with you that I didn't is Exhibit A. If you go to 62, 63, I think this might be in the packet a couple different times, but you have a copy of a letter that is sent to parents. It looks like on this one's dated March the 20th, 2025. See that? It'd be 62 and 63.
Yes.
Okay, and why do you have that in the packet?
This demonstrates the involvement that Ms. Kinderman had directly with parents and students regarding whether or not they should withdraw from the program.
And then the memo is a 2-page memo to parents, and it talks as well about the importance of taking this class. And does it emphasize anything about grades?
It says that they will have 2 math credits. Students that take Math 1 will also be taking Math 8.
Just to save time, the next to the last paragraph is what I'm looking at.
For
Just read the part he wants you to read.
I know that all of our students are involved in many other commitments, so I encourage you to talk over this decision as a family and be sure that putting new effort into this class can be a priority for your student. Do encourage you, I believe it's I do encourage you to remember that there is tons of college money out there for really bright and successful students from our area. The Promise Scholarship alone, which requires above a B GPA and a 1100 SAT score, is $4,750 per year. Tuition to an in-state school. And the math portion of the SAT is what holds too many kids back from receiving this money.
And there, the last sentence on the letter, who is the parent directed to contact regarding this?
Mrs. Burke-Kinderman?
Okay. And her phone number's listed?
Yes.
Okay. And this has a lot of information that's being sent to parents for students who might be considering enrolling in Math 1 as an 8th grader. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is there anything in this letter that you've seen that references the opportunity to withdraw early if you don't maintain a B? We'll meet with you. We'll talk about that. Is that disclosed at all to the parents in that letter?
It is not.
Did you discuss that with her at all about why that's not disclosed to the parents if that's part of the program policy that she's relying?
I don't recall if I did. I don't believe so.
Without repeating everything you've already testified to here today, did your investigation substantiate concerns regarding Ms. Burke-Kinderman's involvement in advocating the historical Math 1 withdrawal and transcription practice?
Yes.
Did you find that her role and influence extended beyond simply asking an isolated question about policy?
Yes.
Did you find additional concerns involving the individual, the Math Day program?
Yes.
Does your June 5th report accurately reflect your completed investigation and final findings?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions of Mr. Kingery.
Can I ask what some,
Yes.
what is your name? I didn't catch your last name from my notes.
It's Kingery, and I'll spell it for you. Kingery.
Thank you.
Mr. Kinnery, my name's Mike Doss. I represent Joanne. When you were hired by the superintendent, you said that what you were supposed to be investigating was the entry of grades? Yes, sir. Specifically with Math 1 or grades? Specifically with Math 1. Okay. So, and then issues with policy and procedures involving Math Field Day. Is that correct? With Math Field Day, it had to do with the purchase of T-shirts and whether or not that was properly done. So those were the two things that you were investigating. Is that correct? Yes, sir. I think it was at that time. Also whether or not students were being permitted to drop from the Math 1 program. In the report, you had made reference in your testimony earlier that you saw the documents where Ms. Kinderman, I guess basically it's the documents between her and the superintendents that hired her to be the math coach and said what her duties were. Yes, sir. You read those? The flyer that the job posting, correct? Right. I mean, let's just go with the last one, which was in 2017, which I think is the one that she's currently still acting under. Her duties stated assist teachers in implementing mathematical content, skills, strategy to promote successful math students. Observe classroom teachers at all schools and provide constructive feedback. Assist staff in selecting, demonstrating, and explaining appropriate textbooks, instructional materials, strategies, and programs. I like this next one. Meet regularly / communicate regularly with school principals and the superintendent for program planning, implementation, and evaluation. Assist in the analysis of data to help plan and instruction, model and demonstrate proper teaching techniques and strategies. Got that backwards. Oversee / coordinate county math field day. Do you know of any laws that Ms. Kinderman broke in violation of her duties that were just outlined right there? No, sir. Do you know of any school policy that she violated in doing her duties right there? In doing those duties? Correct. As described? Those duties do not describe a violation of policy. She did not violate any policies and exercising her duties. Is that what you're saying? No, sir. That's not what I'm saying. So what policy did she violate? My understanding of, and my understanding may not be complete. I only reviewed the policy. Well, let me interrupt you just 1 second. I feel like I make sure. The memo that you're talking about at the beginning of the school year of 2025, do you have that? That's part of your report there also, wasn't it? Yes, sir. All right. If you'll get that up, tell us what page it was. You got it? I believe this would be 171. Okay. I'm reading this, and again, like I said, I'm not that smart. I read this memo as a subject matter, grading periods and report cards, detailing exactly when grading periods start, when they end, when's the midterm, and the grades are due from the teachers. I don't see anything at all on this memo about Math 1. Do you?
Specifically, no.
All right. You see anything on there about Math Field Day?
No, sir.
Do you see anything on there that talks about a transcription date for grades?
No, sir.
Were you given the school policy the memo that came out on the 27th of January, I guess, talking about the school policy in regards to a student can take a high school equivalent class in the 8th grade, not just Math 1. They could take any high school course. Do you agree with that statement if you've read it? If you don't know, just say you don't know. Not,
I don't know.
okay. So really, you don't know enough about the school policies to know whether or not there is a school policy against a student transferring from a high school equivalent class to another class.
No, sir.
Okay. You don't know if students at the high school transfer in any other class. Right now, it's a general practice from one class to another.
I'm not sure the
Well,
nature.
you don't know, for instance, if they had algebra and halfway through the year, they transfer into PE,
If they're allowed to, or,
if they're allowed to.
no, sir.
So it's possible that they're allowed to, you just don't know about it.
Correct.
Okay. And so since you don't know about it, you don't know what grade they might have got for if they transferred in the middle of the semester, you don't know what grade they would have received for the first half of the semester, or what grade would be transcribed at the end of the year. Right?
If you're talking about a particular student, no, I would not. If you're talking about as a procedure, it's my understanding that once a grade is recorded at a semester level, that grade remains. And if a student has taken a course, in your example, Algebra 1 to PE, if they have taken Algebra 1 and have a semester grade, they are supposed to complete that course, Algebra 1, all the way through to the end of the year.
But what if they don't? What if they do transfer into PE? What grade do they get for that first semester?
For the first semester, they would get the grade that is recorded.
Okay. And then at the end of the year, they finished in PE, would they get a grade for that?
They should get a grade for PE.
All right. So I like your term about what happened throughout the years for Math 1 and 8th grade. Because although some people might have referred to it that was our policy, you referred to it as a practice. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Do you know from your investigation, do you know when that practice started, when it began? Yeah, that's the same answer I get from
I
everybody.
believe it was, it had been conducted all the way back into, I believe, 2012 timeframe.
So the practice started before Joanna even became a teacher.
Objection, that's
Do you
not
know?
the facts. That's not the facts. She was a math coach and teacher before.
So
Did teach.
did the practice start before she became a teacher or not? Do you know?
I don't know when she became a teacher.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. You didn't ask her whenever you interviewed her how long she'd been a teacher?
I did. Do you want me to reference?
Next year.
Burke Kinderman has been employed by Pocahontas County in a variety of positions since 2009 and is currently a math instructional coach and has been so since 2017.
Do you know what position she's held with the Pocahontas County Board of Education from 2009? Oh,
No, sir.
okay, all right. But any of the principals, because I only know the people that you interviewed that I know of were Joanne Burke Kinderman, Mrs. Morgan, the science teacher, Nebraska Scotchy, Chloe Schaffner, Melissa Jordan, and Julie Dunlap. Who else did you interview besides those people?
Now, they're all, everyone that I interviewed is listed on the report, with the exception of, Dr. Matthew Campbell. He is not listed. Well, his interview is listed as a recording. If you notice on the report, my report would be page 2. It's listed as F2. Then above that are all of the other individuals that I interviewed, all listed.
Could anybody tell you who actually started this practice? Who all was involved in starting this practice?
No, sir.
I mean, it would have had to have involved principals, superintendents, Board of Education, all the way up to now, right?
The common phrase that I heard was this was always the practice, so this is what we continue to do.
You also interviewed Julie Dunlap, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I take it was her interview about the math one practice also?
Yes, sir.
Um, and did she tell you that she actually approved this policy at one point in time? Or practice?
That I don't recall.
I mean, they even quoted an email earlier that she wrote, right, approving the practice, correct?
Right off the top of my head, I can't recall, but I'll take your word for it.
Okay. But she's not sitting in this chair, is she?
No, sir.
Julie's not. All right. So you don't consider the emails that Joanna was involved in responding to or talking about the Math One program and whatnot, you don't consider that to be part of her communication with school principals in regards to programming, implementation of policies, or any of that, right?
It wouldn't be for me to make a determination as to whether that was the case or not. My only concern was whether or not that was a question or whether she was, again, attempt to influence teachers, principals, and so forth.
Well,
continue this practice.
I mean, my point is this. if we find somebody who's truly objective, not hired by the superintendent to conduct this investigation, do you think that they could read those emails and read the duties that she has that's supposed to be her job and see it that she's doing her job? Or would they take your side and say, because the superintendent wants to find something to hang on her, that she's unduly influencing people when nobody said that here in their things? You're just coming to that conclusion. You see what I'm saying? Do you think you could be objective and read those emails and what her job duties are, knowing exactly what she's doing, and think that she's doing her job?
I believe that I was objective in my investigation.
And I'll add to it, if she was really passionate about doing her job, don't you think that part of that as a math coach is not to take no for an answer easily?
I can see that happening. I don't know if that's, as you're asserting, part of the job.
All right. Can you point to any one thing where she's disregarded a directive from the superintendent and did the complete opposite of it? Meaning, was she insubordinate?
I can't make that determination.
But there's no evidence of it, is
I could say that the email that followed the memo that was sent out would suggest
there? Now, which memo are you talking about? You talking about the memo in January of 2026?
Yes, sir. Well, the memo that you referenced here at the August of 25, and then that email followed that in January.
All right, but that memo in August has nothing to do with whether or not the practice was going to continue, whether or not what Math One had done forever was going to continue. If, for instance, if she's being questioned by administrators, if she's communicating with teachers and administrators and they're asking her, what are we going to do? Can you not see her sending that email out saying, what are we doing? Because isn't that right at the time that the semester ends?
When I asked that question of the different witnesses, again, they all, as I've already testified, they all described that as Ms. Kinderman asking a question, well, giving direction in the form of a question.
I didn't see that in the statements here. Is that just your interpretation of what they said?
No, sir.
Just relax. And then the email that actually came out on January 27th saying this is the policy was after she asked the question. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And there's no evidence whatsoever that after January 27th, she did anything to advocate for the prior practice. Is that correct?
Correct.
I need to beat him up anyway. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. That's good. Can't see what's going on.
Do you have any further questions?
No, I passed the witness. I'm
I
sorry.
had no further questions, and we would ask for a brief recess.
Okay. How brief?
5 minutes.
All
It's maybe a red.
right, let's run through Rich Brady right here. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, Mr. Cooper, you're great. Coffee. Just stand up. So. I think there's only one back there. What it is. As far as well. We'll come back into order. Maroon, do you have any other?
Yes, I call Dr. Williams.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? State your full name.
Dr. Lisa Lee Williams.
I know you stated your name for the record, if you would state your position with Pocahontas County Schools,
I am the superintendent of Pocahontas County Schools.
and how long have you served as superintendent of Pocahontas County Schools?
Just over a year,
When did you start?
July 1, 2025.
As superintendent, are you responsible for the administration of the school system and for ensuring compliance with applicable state laws, state board policy, county board policy?
I am.
And are you also responsible for addressing allegations of employee misconduct when they brought to your attention?
I am.
Dr. Williams, in January of 2026, when this matter that we're here today was brought to your attention, what was the status of Pocahontas County Schools with the Board of Education?
Pocahontas County Schools was in a state of emergency, and we were slated to go before the Board of Education in 6 months to see if it was going to be a complete county takeover. And that means the board would have lost control of the county and we would have lost control of running the county.
So the state board had declared a state of emergency involving Pocahontas County High School.
That's where it started, Jess.
Okay. And are you familiar with the special circumstances review that resulted in that action?
I am.
And next to you, there's just a little way, this is the report Mr. Kingery has been referring to, which was exhibit 2. Here are the other exhibits. If I reference any of these, and you may have a copy of them, but I'm going to reference the special circumstances on-site review report at page 184, which is exhibit number 11.
Okay.
You may have your copy.
I'm gonna do my coffee.
Are you familiar with that circumstances review report?
I am.
And what responsibility did you have as superintendent for addressing the deficiencies identified by the state?
Upon being hired on July 1, I was notified that Pocahontas County Schools was slated for complete takeover approximately July 3rd, 2025. At that point in time, I called the president of the board at that time, that would be President Grimes, told him of the situation, asked the West Virginia State Liaison, Deirdre Klein, what the situation was, and my responsibility was to go and meet with Assistant Superintendent Jeff Kelly, Executive Director Alexander Kreiner, and a team from the Special Education Department on what we needed to do, or what I thought we could do, to prevent that from happening. President Grimes and I then traveled to the State Board of Education and met with that group of people and proposed a plan, and asked that we be given time, because I was a new superintendent, that the county not be taken over in the July meeting. That plan that I proposed at that point in time outlined the things that I was willing to work on and correct to stop that takeover.
Just for clarification, that report was issued before we became.
The report was issued before I became superintendent. The special circumstance review for special education, the board not being compliant in addressing policies and procedures was also before I arrived. I did not know any of those. I knew about the special circumstance review, but I did not know that the county was slated for takeover until 3 days on the job. And then that's when I was made aware of the situation.
Without going through that entire special circumstances review report, did the state's findings include concerns involving grading, student transcripts, WEVA's procedures, and administrative accountability?
It did. It was focus area 2 in the state's grading, transcribing, and scheduling.
And did the state require corrective action be taken in those areas?
Yes, it did.
How significant were grading and transcription compliance to you as the superintendent during this period?
It was pervasive. The issue with grading, with transferring out of classes and transferring into classes, scheduling, course codes, merited a complete and comprehensive review of all student transcripts. And that process had not been completed fully until the end of August. Additionally, students had not received their report cards. They had not received their diplomas. They had not received their schedules. It was a pervasive issue addressing standard 2.
And so in January of 2026, when this matter we'll hear about today was brought to your attention, were you as the superintendent and the school district attempting to demonstrate to the Department of Education and the state board regarding its ability to operate under local control?
Yes, we were.
Okay, and was a meeting scheduled for shortly thereafter for you to actually go do that?
Yes, it was.
So when was that meeting scheduled?
That meeting was scheduled, I believe it was February the 11th.
Okay. So now I want to direct your attention to how the matter we're here today was brought to your attention. Other than it's a recording of these.
That was awesome.
And we silence phones.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Against that background that you just described, did this matter that we're here about today involving Ms. Burke-Kennerman come to your attention in January 2026?
It did.
And could you just generally describe the nature of how it came to your attention?
So on January 22nd, 2026, we had scheduled our final compliance to address the state of emergency and other issues in the county. Part of that was transcribing of grades and establishing a process. We had already established a process for transcription with our liaison, Ms. Deirdre Klein, who had prepared a form that had to be used for any transcript to be adjusted, multiple signatures for review of that transcript, and course alignments. I had put out the memo in August because part of the problem with report cards and reporting grades and credit verification was that grades were not finalized at the end of the 9 weeks, which is part of the 9-week transcription process. Because once a grade is finalized, it cannot be removed other than for computation errors. So a 9 weeks grade is a permanent record grade that is counted, and that's via policy. So we had already established that. I had realigned duties and responsibilities here at the board office, and I had appointed Ms. Hammonds, the WEVA's contact. She was to oversee the grade transcription process. On that particular day, we were working with the West Virginia Department of Education and all the county leadership on what that should look like and how we should complete that process.
And with the transcription procedures and the reporting of grades and the transcribing of grades, you mentioned policy, but that's you have county policies about reporting grades and at 9-week periods, I believe you're on, and there's state board policy regarding that.
That's correct.
And so what was the nature of the concern initially reported to you and kind of how did that come about?
Okay, so Ms. Hammonds had finished her portion, or the State Department had finished their portion of the training on that particular day. And I was just clarifying when we're going to transcribe grades, what it looks like. We're stronger together. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you working here. I know it's been hard, but we're in the home stretch. So we were having that conversation. In the midst of that conversation, there was a verbal report that Miss Burke Kinderman had sent out an email the previous day questioning the transcription process and the recording of grades for Math 1. And I said, well, what are we talking about? All grades are recorded and all grades are permanent. We do not delete grades. It's illegal to delete grades. There's a plethora of ramifications, not just on GPA, but on WVSSAC qualifications and other things, scholarships. It all ties in together. So deleting grades is not acceptable. And during that conversation, several of the principals, there were 3 principals there particularly, that we had the whole leadership there, but there were 3 principals there that said, well, we were asked last night, we were asked yesterday, if we're going to continue to allow students to collect grades the first 9 weeks, the second 9 weeks, midterm, and maybe even the third and fourth 9 weeks, and then allow them to drop that class and those grades to be removed. I said, absolutely not. We are not going to do that because that's not part of our process. Policy 2510 says all grades are recorded, no matter the duration of the period of the time students are in those classes.
And when you mentioned during your testimony there, you said this meeting you were having was a meeting that tied into the whole special circumstances review, and it's a final step, but it was also the State Department was participating in that meeting.
Well, the State Department was participating in that meeting and providing the training to us.
All right, and then at some point, this information came to you that you just described about
That's correct.
something
During
else.
the natural progression of that meeting.
And the meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, but the meeting you had on the 22nd, was it originally scheduled for the 21st? The
It was-
date of Mr. Burke Kinderman's email?
It was scheduled earlier, but we had to do some rescheduling because of a snow day or some conflict. Yes.
And so what did you do in response to that after you learned that during that time? What was your next step?
My next step was I told the principals, I said, well, I need to consult. I know that this is not allowed in policy. I'm going to review state policy. I'm going to review local policy, and I'm going to consult with our WVDE liaison, Ms. Deirdre Klein, because she was still assisting us because we were still in state of emergency. So I left the meeting. I consulted with our liaison, and we conference called in Alexander Kreiner. And I said, I want to be completely transparent about what's going on in our county. We are scheduled to come before the board and to ask to be taken off of takeover status. Today, and I'm gonna get a little emotional about this because there has been a lot of work done in our county, a lot of work. Today, an issue has cropped up that is in our special circumstance review. It does involve high school credits. I need to tell you about it, so I'm completely transparent and I will follow policy and procedure. She said, Superintendent, you follow the policy and the procedure in the investigation process.
So, so then did you commission an investigation? Did you talk to?
Well, what I did after that, because it had been a verbal report in a meeting, I always think it's great to have folks memorialize their statements in a written statement. So I asked the principals that were involved in the process to forward me any emails or anything that could provide context for what they were saying, and to also provide me a written statement that outlined their concerns. And they did that.
And I know you've seen this report laid here, Mr. Kingery's report on the corner of your table there. And I'm not going to ask you to rehash those, but if you were sitting here during the hearing, there were multiple emails that he referred to and referenced. And there's also a statement in there from Ms. Jordan. Was that one of the folks that you'd requested a statement from?
That is correct.
Okay. And then they forwarded emails to you as well, those folks. That's why they appear there multiple times, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay. And so those are the strings of emails that we've talked about here today that you're referring to.
That's correct.
Okay. And then, I noticed, and we have it, it's attached to that other packet that was laid there. It's the very last document, Exhibit 13. Which I noticed was not, he had interviewed Ms. Scotchy, and there's a report of his interview, but that statement that she provided to you was not attached to Mr. Kingery's report. So I want to ask you, is that in fact the statement you received from Ms. Scotchy dated January 28th, 2026?
This is in fact that statement.
Okay. So you then decided, after speaking with the liaison and the State Department representative, and in preparation to go to present with transparency, you were directed, or you were at least understood that you needed to conduct this investigation. Did you already agree with that? Did you believe that was necessary?
I did believe it was necessary for a variety of reasons. First of all, I knew what policy stated about grade reporting. Second of all, I have put out a memo about grade reporting in a process, and I do want to refer to that memo
Sure.
that I put out.
Mhm.
Let me find it. You can help me find the page of it,
The,
the grading memo, because I think it has some very,
it's at the very end. It's gonna be page 171, and then the memo, Ms. Hammonds, that she sent out following your all's meeting, was the next page.
so in this memo, I did it for a couple of reasons, because again, I want to go back to the state of emergency, and we were on the borderline of state takeover. I want you to understand the severity of the situation. And part of that was grade reporting, transcription of grades, changing of grades. There's a variety of things outlined. So in order to ensure that we were completing grading practices on time, it was consistent countywide. I issued this memo, and I'm going to read it, and I'm going to talk about a couple of the key sections that I wrote, because this particular memo was sent to our West Virginia Department of Education liaison and approved in advance before I sent it out to the school system. It was a requirement that this go out to the school system, and I sent it out under the direction and the approval of our liaison. I wanted to provide some clarification regarding report cards and grading periods. I'm sharing the specific dates when all report cards should be sent home. Remember, they hadn't been sent home. Students did not have their report cards. It's important that these go out at the same time across all schools. We will review these dates during the November administration meeting. To ensure we are showing consistent academic progress, all students should receive at least one grade per week. For grades 3 through 5, Mrs. Burns will provide guidance on completing the standards-based report cards. There had also been issues brought to my attention about the standards-based report cards, and share expectations for those. But the distribution dates for report cards will remain the same. I'm establishing a high expectation of when we're going to send grades out, what that's going to look like, and how we're going to communicate with parents, which is delegated to me in policy. Time has been built into the schedule to allow for the end of the grading period, final checks, and corrections of all grades. So we're not going to get to this period of time when student says, my grade wasn't right, I didn't turn in an assignment. So we're correcting all those errors that have been brought to my attention. A firm due date will be set when all grading must be completed and all makeup work submitted. Report cards will then be sent home on the designated countywide date as outlined. This was a requirement. So we never got to the end of the year again and students didn't have their report cards. This was a requirement that we further outlined in the January training when we say that we're going to double check things. We have a great staff here, and we're going to use great practices to regulate those processes and communicate them. So that's why that memo was sent out.
And then the next page in the packet is the January 27th. It's dated January 27th, and it's a memo from Ms. Hammonds. But was the information that's in this memo discussed during that training on the 22nd you're referring to?
It is.
Okay, so this was just a follow-up to to remind everybody, put in writing, here's
It's
what we're.
memorializing our expectations.
Uh, Did you actually appear before the board on February the 11th?
I did.
And what happened?
At that board meeting, I took each of the special circumstances issues. And I provided a folder to the West Virginia Board of Education and the superintendent of the West Virginia Department of Education. And I took each incident and I aligned an artifact that supported how we have worked hard and corrected that and accomplished the recommendations. So for every single issue, I provided documentation that we were working on it, near completing it, or had completed it.
And when this was dropped in your lap, if you will, in late January, you were already putting that presentation together and knew that you needed to appear at the State Department.
I was working diligently to get it all together.
And you said in full transparency, you went ahead and contacted Ms. Kreiner just to let her know this new issue had been, dropped in your lap and you needed to talk to her about it in full transparency and for the fidelity of the school district. And then the investigation was scheduled.
That's correct.
All right. And then did you schedule a meeting with Ms. Kinderman to bring her in just initially?
I did.
And when was that?
That was February the 12th when we had that meeting.
Okay. Was Ms. Kinderman terminated or otherwise disciplined at that point?
Absolutely not.
Okay. What was her status?
Her status was, I just wanted her to come in, provide me some context and some clarification. I asked her questions and gave her an opportunity to provide that to me.
Yeah. And was she placed on paid administrative leave at that time?
She was placed on paid non-disciplinary administrative leave at that time.
And that was communicated to her in writing, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you look at the letter, which we'll go through your letters there as we talk, exhibit A3, other than your main letter, the determination letter, these others should be in order. That was the paid administrative leave letter that you issued on the 12th, and it's on page 175.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is actually the letter that was sent.
Yes, sir.
All right. And it's very clear that she's on non-disciplinary paid administrative leave. Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. And then the next letter that's on 176, I'm gonna just go ahead and go through these while we're there. The next letter is Ms. Burke Kinderman requesting a hearing, this exhibit A4, regarding her paid administrative leave pending investigation.
Yes, sir.
And that hearing was conducted on March the 24th. And the next exhibit A6, is that the minutes of that board meeting?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And A6, actually, it was A5. My eyes didn't do well.
Yeah, I was supposed to say it's A5.
A6, yeah, A6 is the next one. This is the notice on March the 30th of the expanded scope of the investigation. She was given notice that the investigation was going to be expanded and outlined different things that were going to be considered as well.
Yes, sir.
All right. And then if we flip back to the first letter that you sent to her, that was on February the 12th on A3, you put in that letter that should our investigation determine that it needs to be broadened in scope for our review, we will inform you. You had already given her notice that it may also be broadened.
That's correct.
And in fact, it was.
It was.
And you gave her written notice of that.
I did.
Okay. And that letter was March the 30th. And then on May the 29th, A7, that's another letter that you sent to Ms. Burke Kinderman, letting her know that you have scheduled a predetermination informal conference on Friday the 5th at 9 a.m. To basically give her an opportunity to provide information that she wishes you to consider before you make any determination. It's a predetermination conference.
That is correct.
Okay. And then I think you adjusted the time to accommodate her and her attorney's schedules that day, but it was held on the 5th.
That's correct.
Okay. And then on May the 29th, that letter actually is the request to reschedule the hearing. So for Mr. Doss, and you did agree to that. And then on the 9th, this letter A9 follows your exhibit A1 letter, which is your determination letter that was sent out on June the 16th. We're going to go through that in detail. But this letter here was Mr. Doss's response to that letter regarding the determination and requesting that a hearing date, that the date be rescheduled. Correct? That was a letter that
correct.
was received.
Mhm.
Okay, that you were aware of. And then through the series of, which I know we talked about painfully earlier, was the rescheduling process that took place regarding this hearing. It eventually was scheduled for today.
Mhm.
And is this the notice, the special meeting today, A10?
It is.
All right, and exhibit 11, you've talked about that special circumstance report.
Mhm.
And 12 is the minutes of the board meeting where you were at the board meeting.
That is correct.
On page 202, it discusses and shows that you and Ms. Kreiner both presented to the board, state board, and that Superintendent Blatt recommended the emergency be lifted.
That is correct.
All right, and then the final document you've already referenced. All right, so that takes us back to document wise. The only other document in here is the determination letter, which is the first document, which we'll spend some time talking about, dated June 16th. It's exhibit A1. Is that your letter to Ms. Kinderman?
It is.
And so I don't forget it later. We've authenticated all of these documents have been between Dr. Williams and either Ms. Kinderman and her counsel. We'd ask that they all be admitted into the record. Okay, thank you. You provided that letter of March the 30th, expanding the scope of the investigation. Why did you do that? Why did you feel the need to expand the scope of the investigation?
After Mr. Keenery had conducted his initial interviews, I consulted with our attorney, and there was a need to interview additional people for fidelity and to make sure that we have followed all of the things that have been reported. So we expanded it and included additional people in the interview investigation.
And all the additional ways in which the scope expanded were outlined in that letter of March 30th.
Yes, it was.
Okay. And did you receive Mr. Kingery's final report dated June the 5th?
I did.
Did you review it?
I did.
Did you simply accept his conclusions without conducting your own evaluation?
I did not.
What information did you consider in addition to the report itself?
I considered the original meeting with the principals and their statement to me. I considered how they felt that they could not follow my directive because they were being given another directive. There were statements made that you don't understand how forceful she is, you don't understand how she talks to us, you don't understand how we're treated. I considered that the tone and tenor of that meeting was important to me. I considered their written statements. I considered all the policies that I had reviewed. I considered the fact that Mrs. Burt Kinderman was given multiple times to provide context to her statement about policy when I could find no such policy. It was my hope that she would come in and say, here's the agendas, here's the minutes, and here's the sign-in sheets where the core team met and did that. There was no such thing. Even the county math plan that's submitted to Tim Flatley does not say that students will be dropped, their grades will be removed, and they will be completely eliminated. I considered the fact that I did extensive research and 23 students had their entire coursework eliminated. 23 students had an adjusted bumped up GPA because when they left the Math 1 course, their grades was divided by 6 instead of 7 or 7 instead of 8. That affects WVSSAC. That was under the guidance of Ms. Burt Kinderman. And when I had established a process to get us off of state of emergency, to prevent county takeover, that process was challenged in an email by Ms. Burt Kinderman. And I was not copied on that email. I would have not had that email had it not been reported to me and given to me by the principals. That email alone, I believe in my heart, could have stopped us from getting off a state of emergency, could have cost this whole county their right to independence. So it was very serious, not to mention that I'm from Greenbrier County, and I'm aware that changing grades for scholarship purposes has led to other people going to federal prison. You can't change grades for scholarship purposes. So all of those things. And then Mrs. Burt Kinderman's disposition, mannerisms, and tone, both in email and in our interviews, was not cooperative. It was extremely uncooperative, at times saying, I know there's policies, but never really getting down to the core root of what policy. If she could have shown me a policy, if she could have shown me where there was a meeting, we would be having a different conversation. But that none of that was provided. I gave her multiple opportunities to be cooperative. It didn't happen,
And,
unfortunately.
and of course, I know you've already testified about this, but the special circumstances context the county was in was also another factor that you had taken into consideration with regards to all this. I mean, everybody doesn't have that backdrop,
Yes.
but you had that backdrop.
So yes, the special circumstance, which grade transcription and credit validation started at the high school. And since 2023, the principal at that time, I believe, was Joe Riley. He put out a memo on the Pocahontas County High School website, and it still exists on that menu, and says starting 2023, we will transcribe grades at the half credit. That memo was very formally put out, and everyone had known. I was just aligning our practices down to the middle school level and making sure we were compliant to prevent state takeover.
Did you take into consideration, I know you testified, you got those emails and forwarded information from the folks who had reported to you after that January incident where they had been notified without your knowledge by Ms. Kinderman.
Mhm.
Did you review those historical emails that demonstrated communications Ms. Kinderman was having about prior consultants that were in the school district during the special circumstances situation in the state of emergency?
Yes, I knew that consultants had been in the county, and both of those consultants had actually worked for the West Virginia Department of Education and had a deep understanding of knowledge of policy. So yes, I did read those. They were forwarded to me, and they did help provide context to what the principals were saying about the disposition that was used and the tone of the email that was sent to them.
And when you reviewed the emails that came from Ms. Kinderman, that she authored, that are in the packet, we've looked at those already here today. There's lots of stuff highlighted in them. What was your perception of her reaction to someone questioning or saying you can't do this when it comes to the withdrawing and failure to transcribe grades for eighth graders taking Math 1? What was her reaction to that, your impression?
My impression was that if anybody questioned any part of Miss Burt Kinderman's opinion that she stated was policy, that she would become uncooperative, send multiple emails that required a plethora of people to get involved in that. It was, quite frankly, it was quite intimidating.
And during your predetermination conference with Miss Burt Kinderman, do you recall her saying that while she'd been off on leave, that she'd been able to be reviewing all of her emails?
Yes.
Okay, did at any time during your predetermination conference with Ms. Kinderman, did she acknowledge or own those emails and those exchanges from April of 2025 and May of 2025, where she was protesting any changes to that process?
She did not.
Was she represented by counsel at that predetermination conference?
She was represented by counselor and Mr. Rogers.
So she had a representative and an attorney.
Correct. She had two representatives.
And she was permitted to provide any information she wanted you to consider?
That is absolutely correct.
When she and her attorney indicated they needed additional context, was additional context provided?
Yes.
Did you listen and consider the information she chose to provide you
I did.
Did she provide any information during that conference that material changed your understanding of the underlying facts as they had been investigated and that you knew them to be?
She did not.
Did she on occasion refer you back to her responses that she had given to Mr. Kingery during her interview with him?
She did, and I would like to note a response that's in Mr. Keenery's report.
Okay.
On page, it's actually Mrs. Burke Kinderman's response. And if we go to the top of, bill number 039, Mrs. Burke Kinderman was, well, we'll start on 37, on page 18 of the report. Mrs. Burke Kinderman was asked if B was the cutoff for determining mastery for the course. Ms. Burke Kinderman stated that B is what is required to get the promised scholarship in the state of West Virginia. Mrs. Burke Kinderman stated many kids choose to take C's to the high school, and possibly some may have taken D's. She goes on to state, Mrs. Burke Kinderman described a student many years ago. So this is Mrs. Burke Kinderman telling in this report where she believes this comes from. And it leads me to, let me just read it. Mrs. Burke Kinderman described a student many years ago who missed the promised scholarship due to grade average and stated that she wanted to avoid that and do the absolute best for students. This is the situation where this policy came from. Not my words.
After considering all the information, did you reach conclusions concerning the historical treatment of 8th grade students enrolled in Math 1?
Yes, I did.
What concerns you about allowing students to participate in high school credit course, receiving grades during the year and then withdrawing without those grades becoming part of the student's academic record?
Because it does affect their class ranking. It affects WVSSAC compliance and rules. It affects anything that is outlined for them in that policy, because our policy says if you take one course, that course is averaged with the other course that you take to get a score. So those students were not held accountable for taking the original course.
Okay, and let's just walk through that. For example, if you have 8 periods, your grades in middle school, we divided by 8. Is that what you're saying? And then they were changing it to 7. Did you say that earlier?
Yes. So I'm saying, let's say a student has 7 classes. And this is in Ms. Scotchy's statement. I can pull it back. So they have 7 classes. And they decide that they're going to withdraw, not count at the end of the year, all 7 classes, because they're not taking the Math 1 credit to the high school. Then they divided that student's classes by 6. So let's hypothetically say they had 3 A's, 3 B's, and a D. Okay? And you divide that out. You're going to get somewhere around a 3.2. But let's say we drop the D because it's going to affect the promised scholarship at the high school. So we don't want them to take that, which is also a passing grade. They have 3 A's, 3 B's, and they divide by 6. That's going to give them a GPA around 3.5. Does that involve class ranking? Does that change a bunch of things? Yes, it does.
And then also when the student goes to high school, if they would then take Math 1 when they've already taken it and maybe would have received a D in it, they could retake Math 1. Is that correct? But they grades would have to be averaged together, or could they even retake it?
They can't. You cannot take a course that you passed. You can only take a course that you passed.
Okay, so unless they even failed it, they couldn't even retake it.
That's correct.
Why did the possibility of subsequently taking Math 1 again concern you, if you haven't already said?
It concerned me because, first of all, we're talking about all students have to be treated equitably and fairly. I'm sure those students that were in 9th grade that got a C, a D, or F may have also liked an opportunity to retake that course so that the promised scholarship and their hopes of getting the promised scholarship had not been diminished. They are taking the course for the first time, just like the eighth graders took the course for the first time. So it's uncannily unfair to all the students that didn't get an opportunity to retake the course. And I'm sure all the other eighth graders that took that course in the entire state of West Virginia that got a C or a D, maybe they would have liked the opportunity to retake the course too. It was just in violation of policy. It was blatant and it was flagrant.
Okay, now let's go to your letter. That's A1. It's the first exhibit in the packet. It starts on page probably 1, I guess. 1. This is the letter we said your determination letter, June the 16th, that Ms. Burkett requested this hearing on. Your letter has several categories in it. The first one, you've spent a good bit of time talking about already, the Math 1 grade transcription withdrawal and academic record practices. You've outlined that, but I want to draw your attention to policy 2510. You've referred to policy 2510 at the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3. And we've attached a copy of pertinent provisions to 2510 as well, which can be found at pages 15 and 16. Could you just tell the board a little bit about how this 2510 played in here?
So policy 2510, there's a couple of provisions of this state policy that's relevant to this situation. We start off with 6.4A.2. Any student who successfully completes a high school level course, one meeting the high school approved content standards and taught by a content certified teacher prior to 9th grade shall receive full credit for the course towards graduation requirements. The student's permanent record for 9-12 shall indicate completion of the courses. The grade for any credit-bearing course taken prior to 9th grade becomes part of the student's permanent record and is calculated in the student's high school grade point average. If we move on to section 6.4A.3, all students will receive appropriate grades and credit for what? All coursework. All work completed while attending school, regardless of the duration of the enrollment period. Doesn't say, you know what, it might affect the promised scholarship. We'll just not count this for you and give you a second chance. It says all students will receive appropriate grade and or credit for all work completed while attending school, regardless of the duration of their enrollment period. Students cannot receive credit for the same course twice. When a student retakes a failed course, both grades shall be transcribed and the county grading policy will determine how these courses are calculated in the GPA. We're going to move on to, just because it's cited here in my letter, 9.1H.2, counties shall issue weighted grades for AP courses, AC courses, dual credit courses. Credits weighted grades will begin with the 2021 9th grade cohort. In IB courses for which high school students credit is to be awarded. CBMA County Board Education members have discretionary authority to issue weighted grades for other advanced high school courses. Student transferring into the county will follow the county's policy on weighted grade and other advanced high school courses with regard to class rank. Transcribed grades, including non-weighted grades and weighted and grade point averages, may not be changed once they are issued by a teacher and transcribed by the county unless a computation error occurred as verified by the teacher issuing the grade. So once a 9 weeks grade is issued, it is part of the GPA. It is computed in that GPA. You can't go back and change that so kids can participate in sports. It's illegal. So we can't change them. Public school systems do not have the discretion to attribute a pass. This is what it said. Public school systems do not have the discretion to attribute a pass-fail credit with no quality points for courses merely because the student transferred from another public school system, homeschool, or non-public school system. Transcript. A transcript is an official document that serves as a record of a student's academic journey issued by an entity authorized to provide education to the student. The transcript shall include following information: entity issued transcript, county school, if applicable, courses taken, grades and credits earned, cumulative GPA, and date of the graduation. So I want to say that in WVSSAC rules, if you take a course pass-fail, the pass doesn't count, but the fail does count against you in sports participation.
Okay. And then you've also got, you reference in your letter, local policy 5420, which specifies, it's on page 18, that report cards, you mentioned this as well, have to go out at least every 9 weeks, not more than 9-week periods. So that's part of your local policy.
That's part of the local policy, and that's the reason I issued the memorandum of understanding.
Okay. So I think you've spent a good bit of time talking about your concerns with regards to the transcription of grades. So let's move on to a couple of other items here in your letter. You reference, of course, the January 21st email we've talked about several times about Ms. Dorkinman want to confirm that we will not, in all caps, transcribe these grades until the end of the year for these students. And you, after hearing her, when you spoke to her about these matters, you state that you find that the statements that she did make demonstrate she did understand the mechanics and the purpose of the practice, that delaying transcription was so students could withdraw from high school credit and avoid transcript and GPA consequences after earning grades in Math 1. That was
Yes.
one of your findings.
In the letter, she states, I state her statement. I'd like to confirm we will not transcribe grades until the end of the year. For this course, that's what we have done in the past, which in the past got us on state of emergency and potentially county takeover, which allowed students to withdraw from a high school credit in transcription all the way into spring. This is after they have several 9 weeks grades. And again, I confirmed that this happened with 23 students. She further stated this way they can try to push themselves without hurting their future prospects.
And then if we move on to page 4 of your letter, the next section's on GPA and scholarship considerations. You've testified a good bit about that. We've, I think, pointed out through earlier testimony that she, in the March 20 letter that she is listed at the top of, and also says at the end to contact her, she's emphasizing again the B score and the promise scholarship as well in that letter. And you concluded, it says towards the end of that section, that the evidence establishes that the GPA and scholarship considerations were used to justify a practice under which students could avoid the consequences of a grade earned in a credit-bearing high school course.
That is correct. That's what.
And then section 3 is about her resistance to corrective guidance and compliance efforts. Can you tell us a little bit about that, which references back to the prior emails in April and May, the prior year with the consultants? Did you
Yes.
take, what impact did that have on your decision?
Well, in looking at her prior emails, she described an existing practice and defending it by stating this: if you aren't successful with material during first semester, they can withdraw from class with no fear of making that decision. That decision could forever harm their high school math and science pathways. If you don't truly master math, you struggle immensely in the next class. In addition, high school GPA is a huge decider in higher ed cost. Then she goes on, and I state this, she goes on, after the consultants have provided guidance, she goes on to state, Jeremy and Brown are consultants with opinions. They are not all capital letters, the state. At the time of these communications, the district was operating under significant state oversight. And we were also operating under significant state oversight when I was dealing with this situation.
And then she further stated in the next paragraph, you quoted some of the things she has said in the email. basically saying, referring to, we can hire 10 consultants, but they each have different opinions, and basically we can make up our own mind here, but what was your take on that?
My take, yes, she did say that about the consultants. She did say we can hire 10 consultants. We can make up our own mind, but this is the point that was super poignant to me. Even state guidance is just that, guidance. Guidance from the West Virginia Department of Education when we're under state of emergency and we are under eventual or leading to county takeover. It's just guidance.
And
She continued, she said, please don't throw away another part of the program that has proven track record because someone else has a different opinion. Unless you can show us compelling data on kids like ours and have better outcomes than we have.
so the other thing she says in there, and she uses the all caps again, the only thing we have in all caps to follow is policy. At any time in any of your communications with her, did she ever provide you a copy of a board policy or any policy that says this practice was approved or a matter of policy?
No, actually, in the predetermination hearing, she was asked about policies and she referenced that she knew policies existed. She had an opportunity to provide policies again. She did not reference a policy number or provide it to me to support these decisions.
All right. And then the next section is you addressed her failure to support administrative direction regarding grades and transcriptions. And you kind of focused in on the events. Well, you've talked about your memo that went out in August and then the events that occurred in January. Anything else you want to add about that?
On the next page, after she talks about Brian and Jeremy, she further stated, we are some of the foremost experts in the state, the crew of us here in Pocahontas. And then she writes a note, just referring back to the policy again.
Yeah. But then on the page 6, the next section under section 4 about the directive and the meeting, what happened at the meeting in January and all of that. Anything further you wanted to say about that?
Yeah,
You did say there what your finding was about the 4th paragraph down.
yes, but I would like to go to the 3rd paragraph.
Okay.
Despite the efforts to establish consistent procedures, on January 21, 26, an email attempted to confirm continuation of the prior practice. That was not allowed. That was in violation of state code. That was in violation of state policy. And this is what she wrote. I'd like to confirm that we will not, NOT, all capital letters, transcribe grades until the end of the year for this course. That's what we have done in the past, which allowed students to withdraw from high school credit and transcription all the way into the spring. You also advised, it is our advice, and I don't know who R is, because the thread of emails in all of the emails seems like all of the R's, which would be the people, were questioning what was going on. So I don't know if there was a meeting, if there should be an agenda, there should be minutes, there should be a sign-in sheet, but it says it is our advice to students not be able to maintain a B in Math 1 at the semester to consider withdrawing. At the time, this communication, the district had already undertaken efforts to ensure that we would no longer do this.
And then you find that you did not believe that her email of January 21, which was prior to the actual meeting that you were having, or maybe the day you originally scheduled it, you said there was a rescheduling, but you said that you didn't think it was a neutral request for clarification.
No, I do not think it was a neutral request. I think it was to promote the common past practice, which is indicated.
The next section is exceeding the scope of her position as a math coach in the county. You said in the second paragraph there, you described what her role did not authorize her to do, and what was that?
Well, I stated this, it was basically I'm saying before I read it, it's outside her scope of authority. It's outside her job description. Your assigned role does not authorize you to determine whether grades earned in a credit-bearing high school course would be transcribed, whether students could avoid high school credit after earning grades, whether students could later repeat the same course, the same high school course, and whether transcripts and GPA consequences would apply to students and who had already received a grade in that math course. Remember, we're not just deleting grades of students that have an F. We're deleting grades of students that have a C and students that have a D. I go on down there, and as the county math coach, your communication carried substantial influence with teachers, counselors, and administrators, which is shown today. She has substantial influence in the county. I therefore find that your advocacy for this practice discussed herein carried significant greater weight than any individual classroom teacher or materially influenced district decisions regarding these matters. Indeed, the investigation established that administrators, counselors, and teachers frequently look to you for guidance regarding Math 1 because of your position, longevity, and recognized expertise in mathematic programming within our district. They relied on Ms. Burke-Kinderman to lead them in the right direction, and when she said policy says, they believed her that policy said.
And there at the bottom, we moved into section 6, her professional judgment and leadership responsibilities. You'd address that.
Yes, I just talked about, as a math coach, you held a position of significant trust and influence. You are expected to support teachers and administrators, assist in improving our instruction, analyzing data, and communicating professionally with principals and our district leadership. The investigation established that you used your position and influence to advocate for and preserve practices that conflicted with the district's obligations. Recording accurate grading, transcription, permanent records, academic records, and consistent implementation of district procedures. I go on to say County Board Policy 3210 requires professional employees to comply with all federal, West Virginia, and district laws, policies, regulations, and procedures. As the county math coach and instructional leader, you were expected not only to comply with those requirements yourself, but also to support their implementation by other district employees. I find that your advocacy for and continued efforts to preserve the practices described herein were inconsistent with your obligations.
You also mentioned there in section 7, briefly, the math field day part of the investigation. What was your takeaway there?
So during the math field day, an investigation further established, first of all, math field day, I received a purchase requisition on the heels of our audit from the high school where we have purchasing issues. I received a purchase requisition for 56 t-shirts, I believe was the number. I simply questioned, are all these t-shirts for students? And I asked my executive secretary to send an email and ask Ms. Burke-Kinderman if all those t-shirts were for students. And in fact, they weren't all for students. We cannot use quasi-public funds to purchase t-shirts for students. Mrs. Burke-Kinderman fired back an email and said, well, what'd you do in Braxton? It had nothing to do with the decision I was making as a superintendent here. But Math Field Day did originate in Braxton, and individuals paid for their t-shirts in Braxton for Math Field Day. And student t-shirts were purchased out of Step 7A funds. But nonetheless, the evidence established that questions were raised regarding the purchase of shirts and related expenditures associated with Math Field Day activities. The investigation further established when concerns were raised and guidance was provided by administration, you responded in a manner that reflected resistance to supervisory direction and disagreement with decisions made by district administration. Although those concerns are not the primary basis for my determination, I find them relevant because they are consistent with the broader pattern identified during this investigation, that you were resistant to administrative direction and challenged efforts to implement district expectations and follow policies.
The next section there, which before we get to the determination in your recommendation to the board, you took into consideration other factors regarding Ms. Burke-Kinderman there in section 8 on page 9. Could you just highlight those or outline those, please?
I did. Before I made a recommendation, I considered a plethora of things because I don't question her desire to create opportunities for students. I believe that she does have that desire. However, after considering the explanation, I remain concerned. I consider her contribution to the overall math environment of the state of West Virginia. I considered the witness statements. I considered the emails. I considered the meeting with the principals. I considered all the policies. I considered how she referenced policies. So she knew about policy. She knew to look in policy, but she didn't apply the correct policies. I considered all the times I called her in to speak with her, and she was uncooperative in every meeting. I considered all of those factors before I made my decision. And I also considered the role of the Pocahontas County School Board in this process. I make a recommendation, and your recommendation can extend beyond my recommendation or below my recommendation. I also considered the West Virginia Department of Education's role in looking at this process and making some findings or not making some findings. There's many people that are involved in this. I am just doing my job, investigating a report and making sure that policies are applied and that I am doing my due diligence by Pocahontas County Schools to make sure that we are in good standing with the state of West Virginia.
And did you come to, after you reviewed all the information in the investigation and considered it all, did you come to a determination and recommendation that you are making with regards to Ms. Burke-Kinderman regarding her conduct?
Yes, after I considered her explanation that she does not personally transcribe grades, that others were involved in the scheduling and the transcription of the grades, that Math One practices existed prior to the concerns raised by the consultants and the district administration, but I've kind of established how that came about with her own words, and that you believe the practice benefited students and that you believed you were seeking clarification. I made the recommendation based upon the findings that I've discussed here today. I determined that significant disciplinary action was necessary, and I recommended that she be suspended without pay for 30 working days.
Did you consider more serious disciplinary action?
I did.
But after considering the entire record and those factors you just outlined, did you nevertheless determine that 30 working days suspension without pay was the appropriate discipline for this matter?
I did.
Does local control, in your view, Dr. Williams, carry with it the responsibility to ensure that state laws, state board policy, and county board policy and administrative directives are followed?
It does.
Why does that responsibility significant? Why was that responsibility significant in deciding how to address this matter?
This matter, when I was considering how to address this matter, I was considering the situation that Pocahontas County Schools had been in. We were specifically told that policy implementation and not following protocol and procedure was part of our takeover status. In looking at that, I have no choice. I'm a first-year superintendent in this county, and I moved here away from my home, but to do this investigation with fidelity and with righteousness and to be impartial. And I have to do that for Pocahontas County Schools. No one in their right mind would want to have to do something like this their first year as superintendent. But local control is important to me. It's important to the people in this audience. It's important to our school, and it's important to our elected board members that you maintain local control.
Why is adherence to established policies, administrative requirements important to the effective operation of the school system under local control?
Because it establishes order, it establishes process, it establishes procedures. It's a home base. when things are topsy-turvy, when you don't know what to do, you can go back to those policies that are in place and look at them. You can say, well, we thought about this and this is what we put in place. Yes, sometimes policies need to be changed. They need to be adjusted. Some of them need to be adjusted as our legislatures meet and they change the law. Some of them needs to be adjusted as we look at them and we say, okay, new situations has arrived. There's not a law, there's not a state policy that completely regulates this. We have a little bit of local control in making our decision, but they are a home base that keeps the system from becoming chaotic and disruptive and ultimately supporting our teachers and our students and our staff.
Dr. Williams, after hearing Mr. Kingery's testimony today, considering the investigation, Ms. Burke-Kinderman's responses, the pre-determination informal conference you had, all the applicable policies, everything else you've testified about, you considered today, here today in reaching your decisions, you continue to recommend that the board ratify your decision and determination to impose a 30-day unpaid suspension on Ms. Burke-Kinderman.
I do.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
You need to take a break, you all right?
I'm good.
All right. Are you aware of when this Math 1 practice began?
Well, in Ms. Burke-Kinderman's statement, she says, I think Math 1, the plan was submitted last year for Math 1 and Math 8. That's the plan that was officially submitted. But prior to that, it was a part of the practice. When we dropped the course, Ms. Burke-Kinderman.
It's a pretty simple question. When did it start? If you have an idea.
Well, I'm going to object to interrupting the witness. If the witness, I mean, if he has an objection, he can make it, but he cannot interrupt the witness and direct her on what to do.
I would like her to be responsive to my question, not just go on.
Well, that's in a form of an objection. That's what that is.
Just answer the question.
I don't know the exact date now.
Okay. Was that practice still in place at the beginning of last year's school year, 2025, going into 2026?
Yes.
So this practice was in place when the state was overseeing the running of school systems in Pocahontas County last year, correct?
Yes.
But yet that practice of what's going on, even though they were aware of it, because their consultants were aware of it, was never brought up as one of their concerns of something that needed to be addressed so that we would not go under state control. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say that's correct. They knew that Math 1 and Math 8 were being provided to the students. They did not know that courses were being dropped, an entire course, and not added into the GPA.
So during the time that they looked at all this, and these consultants even said in the spring of 2025, in their idea that this was not correct, the state did not formally say, you need to change what you're doing in Math 1 with your 8th grade math graders. Is that correct statement or not?
I'm sorry, can you say it again? I just want to make sure I understand your question.
All right. There's an email that you keep referring to with two consultants from the state that work for the West Virginia Education Department and all that, which they weren't. Let's just start with that. They weren't interviewed by the investigator, correct?
They were not. You're correct.
Okay, all right. Matter of fact, was anybody from the West Virginia Educational Department interviewed by the investigator?
No.
All right. So whenever I read what they had as the deficiencies, I don't see where the Math 1 8th grade issue had to be redressed and corrected so that we would not be under state policy. I read that. It's not in there. Is that correct?
The special circumstances, the high school only.
All right. But they looked at it because we know they did because of the email, correct?
They looked at what exactly?
The Math 1, how it was being conducted.
They looked and saw that we were having a math 1 and an 8th grade math at the same time.
Now, are you aware of any other school districts that do exactly what we did from January of 2026 back for the last 12, 15 years? I mean, we don't know when it began, so I'm just guessing. Do you know of any other school districts that do the same thing?
I do not know of any other school districts that deletes grades.
As part of your investigation or your investigator's investigation, did you ask him to check with any of the other school districts to see if they do it?
I did not.
Okay. Would you be surprised to know that 5 other districts at least do exactly what we did based upon what Pocahontas County did?
So just to clarify, I'm understanding the question.
Okay.
You're saying that there's 5 other school districts that have 8th grade students take a math course, and if they don't have a B average, they delete their grades.
Oh, now wait a minute. No, that's not what I'm saying, because I'm not going, I'll get into the details. Are you aware that there's 5 other districts that students take 8th grade and 9th grade math at the same time?
I'm sure there are other districts that do
Okay.
that.
So are you aware that they let students transfer from the 9th grade math class to other courses if they're not doing them?
I would assume that they could,
Uh,
but I would assume they kept their grades.
All right, but again, there were numerous people involved in this practice when it began. Would you agree?
According to the email, there were numerous people in that email.
All right, and talking superintendents, administrators, meaning principals, teachers, board members, and even Joanne. Would you know that?
I do not know if there were board members on it, but I do know that Ms. Ballstick and Ms. Dunlap was included on that email.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. And that was just in the last couple of years, in 2025 or 2024,
That
right?
was prior to my arrival. Yes, sir.
So even before that time, you don't know because you weren't here.
That's correct.
And there's no documentation to reflect that, right?
That
There's no document policy to reflect what was going on.
correct.
So when you're talking policy, what you're talking about is a written policy from the state saying this is what we'll do under certain circumstances, correct? You're referring to policy.
I'm referring to something that's been memorialized and board approved.
All right. And or it could be local when you're talking board policy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So when Joanna's referring to policy, you're thinking that she's referring to something that's memorialized, right?
Correct.
Could she have been referring to practice?
If there was a practice such of that existed of that magnitude, there should be an agenda, minutes and sign-in sheets from the curriculum committee.
All right. So it's her fault that there's not that. Is that what you're saying?
And I'm saying that there was no evidence of that.
All right. All right. But we know that it went on, right?
According to the emails.
And we know that it went on for numerous years.
Correct.
All right. And again, it was going on whenever you started last year, all through the first semester, right?
Correct.
And didn't stop until you sent out the directive January 27th, right?
What didn't stop?
The math 1, 8th grade thing.
The deletion of grades did stop when I sent out the
Okay.
directives. I stopped that from happening.
All right. So did you specifically ask Joanna about the deletion of grades that took place prior to January 27th, 2026?
Ask her if she participated in the removal of grades with the deletion or changing of grades.
Did you ask her specifically if she did that?
I don't remember the specific question, but I said, do you know or have any recollection of or participation in, I believe, in the deletion, removal of grades for any student?
Well, I believe I was at one of the meetings and I believe the question was, are you aware of what went on with Math 1 field day? You all were expecting her just to walk in here and tell you, hey, this is what all happened. This is what I did and everything, right? I mean, you didn't come forward and say, hey, do you know who approved deleting these grades? You didn't ask that, did you?
That was not asked to my
All
recollection,
right.
recollection.
I mean, what she was telling you, she had nothing to do with the grades, right? That's what she told you.
She did not respond in our meeting, in our predetermination meeting to things,
Well, I mean, the investigator, he already gave us his report,
right?
all right? And you read that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and actually, you had that information in his first report that he issued in February, right? The 24-page report. Didn't you get that?
We discussed his findings and expanded the investigation on those. So yes, I did get that.
Okay, so where's the report from the 24th? Where's that? Who has that?
We have that, but
Okay.
it is the exact same report.
Now
just
that you
expanded.
testified, now that you testified about it, would you produce that today? Do you have it? right?
It is all in the same report. It's all one report.
No, there was a 24-page report done back in February. Where's it at?
It is this report. It's just expanded upon after he did other reports.
Which part of this is the 24-page report and which part of it's 46-page?
The first day of interviews was the first, and then when he conducted additional interviews, he added that interview information
Alright.
to it.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But where is the 24-page report that's listed on your Vaughn index that you will not give to me because of the Freedom of Information Act? Where's it at?
Listen to what I'm saying.
I'm listening. I
That
can't understand.
24-page report is this report expanded on. So that report, all the information, those reports are the same report. They're expanded on reports.
I'm sure your attorney gave you the letter that he wrote in response to the Freedom of Information Act request, did he not?
Correct.
All right. Gave you the Vaughn index that went along with it. Is that correct? You know what I'm talking about?
Honestly,
That's,
if you're telling me a Vaughn index, I'm not familiar with that term.
well, it was the document, I guess, that he prepared and gave you
Mhm.
that eliminated every document that I requested, that you claimed a privilege or there was a reason for eliminating.
I'm going to object again to this line of questioning. This is the same, we're just rehashing the same issues from earlier today. We've said repeatedly, the law is clear about it. Mr. Doss is entitled to the evidence that's presented here today. That's what he's been given a copy of. That's what he's entitled to. This hearing and these questions, there's been a lot of them, are just going far beyond what the scope of this hearing is for. It's for her to have an opportunity to respond. We have demonstrated the charges. We've explained the charges. Certainly he can ask questions, cross-examine her on the testimony here today. Now we're going outside of that and we're going to ask about things that are not here before the board today in this hearing.
Well, the reason why I asked this is this. If the West Virginia Department of Education had no issue with this, and it was not part of what their problems were that need to be corrected, otherwise we'd be taken over and this would be an emergency situation. Then assume the day after you went down there and they released us and said everything's okay, you send a letter or email saying you want to meet with her, right? First you contact her by email saying you want to meet. Is that correct?
I sent her an email about having a conference.
Okay, and in that email, you said that what you wanted to discuss with her in this meeting was to conduct matters and to review data accuracy and reporting processes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So before she showed up for that meeting, did you already have the letter prepared to place her on administrative leave?
Absolutely not.
No, you did that afterwards.
That's correct.
Okay. Same day.
After the meeting,
Okay.
they memorialized the meeting. If you look at the letter, it says, the purpose of this letter is to commemorate our meeting this morning. You attended along with your representative, Jason Roger.
I'm fine with your answer. You've already, in the last hearing, you read that to me 3 different times. And the questions I kept asking numerous times was to find out what the underlying facts were about math one
Understand.
and the math field day.
I understand.
Now, in that meeting, you would not respond as to what your findings were or what your concerns were before that, correct?
That, the purpose of that meeting was to approve or not approve non-disciplinary paid leave.
No, I remember, because it just sticks in my mind. I remember Mr. Grimes reading it saying the purpose of that meeting was to determine whether or not your actions were arbitrary and capricious. You remember that?
I do remember.
Okay, all right. So, but when Mr. Marone says I asked numerous questions of you, it was really, I asked the same question over and over and over, correct?
I agree.
Okay, I wanted to know the underlying facts about math one, what you knew at that point in time that caused you to place Ms. Kinderman on this leave of absence for non-disciplinary reasons with pay, right? And you wouldn't answer, right? You wouldn't tell, you never told the board one thing that concerned you about what was going on, other than policies and procedures for math one and policies and procedures for math field day, correct?
Because policies and procedures for math one and policies and procedures for math field day
Correct.
were the issues at hand.
That's what you advised her of, right?
That's correct. And that's what I've outlined today here, that we're looking at policies and procedures for math
All right.
one and policies, procedures for math field day.
But you never, the last time you never testified as to what exactly she did in violation of those policies and procedures of math one, correct?
Because no investigation had concluded and I didn't
I
have
understand that, but why did we even have the hearings? Why I'm asking.
to have the board approve pay for non-disciplinary.
You
administrative-
wanted the board to rubber stamp a decision that you made, right?
No,
I'm gonna object. Now we're just arguing with the witness and he's rehashing something that's happened months ago.
I know,
That's history.
but-
It's in the minute book, the record.
Since they did approve it, how did that turn out so well for them?
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
There's three of them gone.
That has nothing to do with me.
Okay. I'll move on. So now it comes January of 2027. What's the policy? If a kid takes math one, does he end up with a grade for math one for the first and second semester? And then whatever class, if he transfers into the grade he gets in the second semester?
In January 2027, which will be next year, we will follow all local and state policies regarding grades.
All right, okay, so now let's go to the state policy, and that's at 50, whatever,
2510.
2510, right? And you quote that in the letter, you quote it and everything. And what it actually says is that if the eighth grader takes a course prior to grade 9, that's a high school level course, they shall receive full credit for that course toward graduation requirements. And provides that happens when the student successfully completes the high school approved courses prior to grade 9, correct? Isn't that what it says?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what does happen if they transfer into something else? What happens?
The grades from that course are recorded, and then they get grades from the additional course they transferred into. That was actually part of our state of emergency and transcript reviews. And there was a form developed by the West Virginia Department of Education liaison, Ms. Klein, because kids were in a course for a half semester, and then they were transferring to another course.
All
And
right,
they weren't ending up with the full credit. So they keep their grades, they leave the course, but they keep their grades and it's part of their transcript.
do you know if Joanna was ever informed of that?
Informed of what?
That was the policy after that, the memorandum or whatever. When was she informed that that's how it would be taken care of? When were the teachers informed of that?
That students would keep their grades?
Yes.
That was always the process at the high school. They kept their grades for the half semester they completed.
Okay. I mean, when were the principals or the teachers of the eighth grade, ninth grade math, when were they informed that this would be the policy?
For keeping your grades,
Yes.
it's always been, that's what should have been done. It was not brought to my attention to correct it until January 22nd.
All right.
I believe that's the question. I'm not sure if that's.
All right, but do you know that from talking to Joanna, that she ever knew that grades were being deleted and not recorded at all?
She says that in her statement. She says we will allow them. Let me go back
I
and
think it
read.
says allow them to withdraw. It doesn't say anything about what happens to the grades.
Well, where does their GPA go? What happens to the GPA?
No.
She says to not hurt their GPA. If the grades aren't there, how are we not including that grade in their GPA?
Was she responsible for the entry of any grades?
No, sir.
Okay. Who is responsible for the entry of the grades?
But code and policy teachers are responsible for the entry of grades.
All right. Does Joanna have access to look at those grades? At that time, would she have had access to look at those grades?
I believe that she had access to look at grades, but she does not have access to Weavis now. If that, is that your question?
Back then, would she have had access to Weavis?
To look at grades, yes.
Okay. And when your part of your initial investigation was trying to determine if grades were being changed, if I remember right, correct?
Correct.
And so with Weavis, can't you just immediately look on her how many times she's got on there, if she's entered her code, to see if she's looked at grades?
There was a period in time when we had green screen that we had a lot more reliability, but we have implemented a new Weavis, and I have actually called the State Department or had a liaison call the State Department and check what can we see and what can we not see. And it's not as easy as it appears to be to go back and see who logged on how many times. No.
When did this new Weavis system start?
Miss Hammond's helped me with this date.
No, I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Okay, not this year, not last year, not the year before, 4 years ago.
Okay. So before then, you could actually get on there and see who got on the system and what they looked at or what they did or anything, correct?
On green screen, yes.
Okay. But now you can't?
It's not as easy.
But in the end, it was determined because that she had nothing to do with changing any grades. That's not an issue whatsoever, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And while I'm at it, just make, so it's possible then for, I don't understand this 2510. What happens if a student does not complete that class? So if they complete it, then that grade becomes a transcript. That grade is transcribed into their transcript. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Which takes place at the end of the year, correct?
Since 2023, it was the policy of Pocahontas County Schools issued under Joe Riley, Principal Joe Riley, that all high school credits would be transcribed at a half credit and a whole credit.
Well, that's what 2510 says too, right? Is that once you complete the course, then it gets transcribed to your transcription, correct?
At the semester and at the end of the year,
All right.
correct.
Well, doesn't it say when you complete the course?
It does say when you complete the course, but if you withdraw at the mid-year, then whatever grade you have for that course transfers because they are transcribed at the half credit here in Pocahontas County Schools.
So prior to January 22nd, you're saying that during that preceding 6 months or whatever it was that you were superintendent, the state had control over it. You did not know what happened to the grades for those first 9 second 9 months, correct?
When I started as superintendent on July 1, 2025, I put out a memo in August that said grades will be submitted and finalized at the 9-week period. So those grades at the 9-week period are officially finalized and part of the GPA.
I understand that, and I've read that. In here, that was part of the investigative report. That's the memo that he's trying to lie upon, saying that she violated. All right, I mean, we already went over that. There's nothing in there about math 1. There's nothing in there about how this will be handled. Nothing in there about if they transfer. There's nothing in there about transcription of grades. Is that correct?
There is, that memo encompasses math one and the requirement to finalize grades at the end of each
Okay.
9 weeks.
All right. Do you know if that memo was sent to her?
That memo was sent to everybody in the school system.
Okay, all right. Does she have anything to do with the entry of grades at the end of 9 weeks?
No,
Does she have anything to do with the entry of grades at the end of the semester?
no,
Does she have anything to do with the entry of grades at the end of the year?
no.
All right. So really what you're telling us is that allowing someone to take 9th grade math when they're in the 8th grade is perfectly fine. All right? And even if they transfer at the end of the semester, that's perfectly fine, correct?
Mhm.
As long as those grades are reported.
That's correct.
All right. In those 23 cases that you looked at,
Mhm.
you're saying grades were just deleted completely.
23 cases where students either had a C, a D, or F in math one in 8th grade, and they were deleted and they retook the course in 9th grade.
Okay. And you know who the teachers were of those 23 students?
Yes,
And are they still teaching today?
I believe so. I don't know the names. I know most of the names of teachers. I see some of them in here, but I have to work on names and faces. So
But they're not sitting here, are they? They're not sitting here beside me, right?
that's right. I don't see them sitting beside you.
And are there principals that are still administrators right now that were there during the time that these 23 students' grades were deleted?
I cannot say that all the principals that are principals now were principals then. That would take me looking at. Some of them are the same principals.
So let me ask the question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. But again, those principals are not sitting here beside me either, right?
I do not see them.
All right. Have any of those teachers or principals been contacted to come into your office and go over what happened?
I'm going to object. Mr. Dawes has no right to require about any other employees in this hearing here today. This is about Ms. Burke Kinderman's conduct, and that's what the scope of this hearing is. It's not about other employees.
I'll rephrase. So this timeline thing that you went over earlier with Mr. Marone, and first, the people, the first person that contacted you at this meeting and told you, hey, we got this going on with Math One, what about the email? Who was that, the first contact?
It was a group discussion. There were a couple of people that brought up the email. Ms. Burns brought it up and Mrs. Fauci brought it up.
And how did they bring it up? I mean, did they bring it up like, what are we doing here? I mean, how are we handling this? You know, we're confused. I mean, how did they bring it up?
The context was, we are being questioned on if we're transcribing the grades. You're saying all courses, does this apply to all courses except Math One? And I said, it applies to all courses. We are transcribing grades. This is our process moving forward for transcription.
And so the first time any of these people knew any of this was in the meeting on the 22nd, when you dealt directly with the Math One. Is that correct?
They knew we were correcting transcription of grades and we were working on that. The question came up to me the first time.
I'm not talking about transcription of any other grades other than Math One, okay?
Okay,
So were these people aware that the math one, from there on out, you had to transcribe grades for first 9 weeks, the second 9 weeks, all that.
Everybody in the county was aware of the transcription process that was being implemented. There, I did not separate courses out. I made a statement that we are transcribing grades at the semester and at the end of the year. All grades.
So now what happens today if a student at mid-semester, he's got 9th grade math, and then he transfers because you said what the print, Nebraska, Scotchy told you was when they transferred, they just did away with class. Instead of having 7 classes, they just let that kid have 6, right?
I did not say that. Ms. Scotchy said that in her statement. Would you like for
Okay,
me to read it
all
for you?
What class did they take in place of that?
That's the question. It appears that they took 6 classes instead of 7.
Well, I mean, you said you did your investigation too, correct? So I'm just trying to figure out today, back when I was in school, I went from 7 to 6, that meant I had a free hour to do something. So what did they do in that 50 minutes, 60 minutes? What did they do?
I am wondering if they didn't just stay in the class and then they finished the class without transcribing that class.
But you don't know.
I do not have
Okay.
empirical